across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Very much appreciate your company. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for joining me. We have an awful lot to be talking about today. An awful lot revolving around this China spy case. It's very complicated. There's no doubt about that at all. But it seems to me sometimes to be a bit too complicated even for the Prime Minister to get his head around. It was certainly the focus of all the attention at Prime Minister's questions yesterday. It's on a lot of the front pages today. Well, we'll try to get to the bottom of it. The guests include not only my guest in the studio, we'll come to him in a moment, but also the former boss of MI6, Sir Richard Dillove. He might have a clue what's going on, probably better than the Prime Minister. Anyway, we are going to talk about this, crucially after the Prime Minister has allowed the publication of 3 key witness statements in the now-collapsed case against 2 men accused of spying for China. Britain's Deputy National Security Advisor, he's a civil servant, not a political appointee, he's called Matthew Collins, but he gave 3 sets of evidence saying the UK was committed to a positive relationship with Beijing in the final set of evidence, despite a list of attacks against the UK by Chinese-linked groups. Now, he'd warned that China posed a threat to economic security and was carrying out large-scale espionage activities against the UK, but for some reason stopped short of describing Beijing as a threat to national security. Now, the case collapsed last month after the Crown Prosecution Service said it simply didn't have enough evidence from the government on the question of whether China represented a threat to the UK. So what is going on? We're going to be talking about that. Also going to be talking about the BBC's coverage this week of the ceasefire and of Hamas and indeed the Palestinian prisoners coming home. Oh, these poor men who've been in prison, despite the fact that they have, murdered a dozen people in a terror attack. We'll talk about that. Plus the Chancellor, in her own words, admitting that wealth taxes are going to be part of the story of the budget next month. But she's denied they're going to spark an exodus of better off Britons. Well, good luck with that, Rach. We'll see how that works out. Coming up, joining me for all the chat, I'm delighted to say, is Philip Ingrams, MBE. Rather conveniently, on a day when we are discussing intelligence and security threats and what on earth is going on with international espionage, just happens to be a former senior military intelligence officer. Good morning to you.
Good morning. I know nothing. I deny any knowledge. I can't say a thing.
The torture will now begin. Now, I'm going to put the question to you, but I'm going to put it to the audience first and give them the number, just a reminder, because the Prime Minister, the Civil Service, and apparently the Crown Prosecution Service don't appear to know whether or not China is a threat to Britain's national security. So my question to you, my lovely audience, is do you think China is a threat, and why? And what do you think on earth is going on in this China spy case? Bearing in mind the 2 men who've been accused of crime have denied said they are innocent, they've denied any guilt, and that case has collapsed. But give us a call on 03444 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1. Standard network rate message. We'll get your calls very, very soon. So, Philip Ingram, is China a threat to Britain's national security or not?
Yes, it is.
There we are. And moving on with the show.
Right. So we don't have to discuss this anymore. It is, without doubt, you're one of the bigger threat actors that are out there. Its primary collection task or a priority is getting economic advantage. China is the 2nd largest economy in the world. UK is the 6th largest economy in the world. It's got links to the United States, links into EU and everything else, and China wants to try and exploit that to gain further economic advantage for itself. At the same time, it's then looking for political advantage and military advantage in a lot of what's going on around the world.
Well, I mean, again, and China won't be the only country doing that.
Oh,
there's no
every country does it to every other country.
Wait a minute, but I mean that they, obviously, Russia's doing it, Iran's doing it. Oh, come on. We've seen evidence recently that we've got America spying on Germany, for goodness sake. I mean, everyone's spying on everyone.
Yes,
so let's not
exactly.
pretend this is what countries do.
Correct.
But particularly when they are hostile nation states. But here's the thing. in this particular case, we've got two men who were accused. They have denied all charges, but the charges have been dropped now, but they have been accused of basically spying for China, handing over documents. One was a parliamentary researcher. This is Christopher Cash and Christopher Berry, of handing over documents to China, a hostile nation state, an enemy state. And the whole case seems to hinge on whether or not, at the time these alleged crimes took place, whether or not China was deemed an enemy state. Now, the law has been changed in recent years, in the last couple of years, which changes it. So to prosecute someone under effectively the Official Secrets Act, it has to be handing documents to an enemy state as opposed to just sort of any other state that we're having problems with. That seems to be the crux of the matter. But it all comes down to who knew what when and who had what meetings, because we've got a Prime Minister who appears to be at odds with the Director of Public Prosecutions, that's Stephen Parkinson. Given that the Prime Minister is a former Director of Public Prosecutions, the person in charge of the Crown Prosecution Service, that's quite something. We've got two other former Directors of Public Prosecution who've also basically backed the current one. He seems to be in dispute with the civil service after one of his ministers, Security Minister Dan Jarvis, earlier this week, basically came out and went, oh, no, this decision wasn't made by the National Security Advisor, the political appointee, the special advisor, who is Jonathan Powell, but by the Deputy National Security Advisor, a civil servant, long-standing Matthew Collins. Now, the trouble we've got here is that Matthew Collins appears to be very well respected within the civil service and very well respected by the last Tory government and by many current figures within the Labour government. And so we're getting a lot of information that's coming out here and there. Last night, after Prime Minister's questions, when Kemi Badenoch, all 6 questions, bang, 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 all about this issue, really got quite nasty between the two of them, quite personal. Basically, she's saying, well, I smell a rat. And the Prime Minister goes, oh, there's nothing. We're going to publish these statements later. They publish the statements. There's not a smoking gun. There's no document that says, let's not give them evidence in this because we'd rather have an economic trade deal with China. There's nothing that obvious. However, there is stuff in these documents, in these evidential statements, that suggests that there was some deliberate attempt to not give the Crown Prosecution Service the evidence they needed and had repeatedly asked for months to get the evidential level over the line to be able to bring a case.
There's a number of things in that. First of all, the Prime Minister turned around and tried to blame this all during the Tory government, but one of the documents he released last night was dated whenever the current government is in place, so he brought it. And you're right, it's down to the subtleties of the law. The Official Secrets Act 1911, which is what the individuals were charged under, defines an enemy as a state that you're effectively at war with, or a state that you're not at war with but considered a future adversary. Now, it's that bit that the government hasn't defined. However, there was a High Court ruling in 2025 that broadened that to be a bigger threat, and that's something that could have easily been tested in court.
Well, this is the thing. I mean,
it's up to the courts
it's
to do
up
that.
to a jury to decide. It's the idea that this case, again, I must stress the two men who were accused do deny any crime.
Yes.
But the idea that this case didn't pass an evidentiary threshold, the fact that they couldn't have got, I mean, Richard Diller, we're going to speak to later. I think he'd have been happy as a former MI6 boss to say, yes, he considers China to be a threat. Numerous other people. There are numerous statements by the former government at the time, and this all came up in Prime Minister's questions, what the former Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, had said, what other government members have said, and the Business Secretary, as she now, the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch. Everybody has said, look, China is a threat. Yes. There were numerous documents that stated this. It doesn't. None of this rings true.
It doesn't.
Okay,
it doesn't
so
smell right.
do we think? What do we think? Look, bearing in mind, I'm always in favour of the cock-up over the conspiracy as a general rule. But what do we think? What's our best guess about what has actually happened, Philip?
It's very difficult to work out exactly what's happened because it would be so easy for the government to turn around and make a very clear statement to say the 2023 Act, which is the new National Security Act, has a definition of material assist a foreign intelligence service, but that wasn't applicable because these actions happened before that came into place.
Or alleged actions, yeah.
And the 1911 Act if the government turned around and said, we have had no formal definition during that time, no matter what people have said, it hasn't been formally put in a way that would, in our opinion, cross the bar to make China an enemy to be applicable under that act, full stop, draw a line under it, move on. The fact that the case has collapsed, the intelligence services probably aren't too bothered about that, because they've disrupted the whole of the
They don't want this stuff
operation.
coming out in open court.
And they wouldn't want to reveal it. It's not unusual that if you've got a court case based primarily on data that's coming through intelligence services, they don't want to be quizzed in an open court where a defence barrister can drill into things that they don't want to release. And therefore, it's quite often that they'll get something to the point where it goes to court and then withdraw their evidence.
OK. Here's the thing, though. How much political influence do we think there was? Because one of the things that we are being asked to believe, and various journalists who've been on top of this are basically asking us to believe that for months and months and months, the Crown Prosecution Service was asking this senior civil servant, can you please provide us with the evidence that we believe there has? And we thought there was until a few months ago, but somehow miraculously there isn't. And there are different interpretations of why they've done that. Can you please, we're about apparently said we're 5% short of the threshold. I mean, I know of many cases, as covered as a journalist, which have a lot less evidence than this case. So it's a bit bizarre they're even claiming that. But we need some more evidence, please. So for many, many months, he refuses to reply. Doesn't bother mentioning it to anyone, not even over a coffee, not over, you're popping to go to get some water in the kitchen at work, and you don't mention it to your boss, National Security Advisor. By the way, the Director of Public Prosecutions is asking me for more evidence in this high-profile case that's been on the front page of the newspapers over the last couple of years. Really, I mean, I find that incredible in the true sense of the phrase, as in not credible, as in simply never happened.
Correct. Yes. There is something going on that is covering this up, and the fact that the Deputy National Security Advisor did not seek advice from his boss is just wrong. You'll have sought advice from a number of different people. The fact that
he'd be crazy not to, even just to protect himself.
Oh, very much so. And he's competent.
So,
and he knows that. And the Security Minister stood up in Parliament and made a statement about this. And then less than 24 hours later, it was proven that he hadn't brought out some of the detail that then came out. And then the Prime Minister says, we can't release the evidence. And then he goes and releases the evidence. The government is tying itself in knots here, which all points to there being something that they're trying to hide.
And they're trying to cover up. Could it be as simple as, look, they didn't want this case to go forward because they genuinely thought that it's not going to serve any purpose, and it's going to anger the Chinese. We've already sorted these guys out if they believed they were guilty, and we'd rather get a trade deal because trade is vital to us. And I mean, is it just that simple? And if it is that simple, is that something we should be worried about? Because at the end of the day, look, there's no doubt at all this government is incompetent. We've seen this on an extraordinary level. We've no doubt at all also that many politicians of many political hues are very, very excited about people with money, whether they are rich billionaire donors, whether they're big companies, whether they own Twitter or X, whether they are foreign national governments. We know that our politicians across the board are willing to go, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir, to these people. And that is one of our concerns. But when you're in a situation where it looks like that our national security has played second fiddle to, I don't know, £1 billion, nothing, no mark money down the back of the sofa trade deal, that is a concern.
It is a concern, and the government has to balance off, and this is a political decision, the political relationship it has with China, the second largest economy in the world, and ourselves as the 6th largest economy in the world, and both permanent members of the Security Council of the United Nations. So it has to do that, but it then has to balance off our relationship with the United States and look at what's going on there. And we are out of step with the United States' view on China and what's going on at the moment. So the government is in a very difficult position and has got a very difficult balancing act. All the decisions in that are political. However, this should come outside the political side of things. It
absolutely should, yeah. I mean, also we've got Dominic Cummings. I don't know, how much can you ever trust anything Dominic Cummings says, the former number 10 aide to Boris Johnson? He's got
eyesight difficulties.
Well, exactly. Were you not at a castle for your eyesight problems? But China stole Britain's state secrets for years. He says they used a backdoor into sensitive Whitehall computer systems. The Chinese were allowed to buy a company that controlled a data hub used by government departments to exchange information, including highly classified projects, not some of the most super highly classified, but they basically accessed it for absolute years. So while we're a bit worried about two men who've been accused of passing a couple of documents over, you've got to wonder.
Oh, 100% China will be doing that. China is monitoring the streets of London today through CCTV cameras.
They've hacked.
No, they haven't hacked them, because certain CCTV cameras, when you buy the package, they'll give you a cloud storage package that goes with it. The servers are in continental China. They can run whatever they want on the servers to AI to monitor people wandering around the streets of London.
Madness.
Without the owners of the camera knowing about it, and without any of the privacy legislation that is applicable in the UK being applied to what the Chinese are doing. They are a significant threat to this
But
country.
I think what we should definitely do is on Tuesday, the government should approve planning permission for them to have a huge, massive, bigger than any other embassy in the country, and indeed the biggest Chinese embassy in pretty much the world.
Very close to the City of London.
Close to the City of London, very close within metres of some crucial communication cables. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? And by the way, the planning documents have a whole basement area, a super basement that is completely redacted. We've got no idea what's down there. Oh yeah, we do. I mean, it's just, probably knowing the Chinese, torture chambers. I mean, I'm not being glib. I'm not being glib. They dragged Chinese dissidents off the streets demonstrating outside the Chinese current embassy and dragged them inside. And, goodness knows what happens to them. I mean, we are insane. We are sleepwalking into this stuff.
I was looking at those plans only yesterday in minute detail, and it's not just the embassy itself. It's it's in the centre, the centre of the City of London. There's a lot of people living around the outside of it. The Chinese will be actively surveilling everyone that has got a direct view of the embassy and an indirect view, and they'll be sucking up all of the communications that are going on around the area. So people's personal mobiles, their Wi-Fi's, they will be interfering with people's personal lives the whole way around. This is something that should never be allowed to be put in there.
And it's already been, Town Hamlets Council, the local council, they've already said no.
Yeah.
And that's a useless council. I'm in my local paper training around there. I mean, even more so now under Ramen. But I mean, it's just extraordinary. I mean, we are, again, we had a Tory government that were quite happy to hand over for a 5G to Huawei, a Chinese company. Again, all Chinese-owned companies are completely and utterly beholden to the Chinese government.
Article 7 of the Chinese National Intelligence Act requires all individuals and companies to comply with Chinese intelligence when asked to do so.
And where they are asked to do so, and they do comply. The fact that was nuclear power stations, you name it. I mean, they're supplying most of the cars, the e-cars. They're making all the wind turbines, making the solar panels. They've been involved in the nuclear power. I mean, let's let people who are a hostile nation threat state, let's face it, an enemy state, who are spying on us, who kill their own people for being dissidents, who don't. We saw what they did in Hong Kong, for God's sake. I mean, but by all means, let's let them have control of our critical infrastructure, and let's cozy up to them because we desperately want a trade deal. This is manifestly insane.
Completely insane. And what it's doing is it is undermining the very fabric of our industrial society, our research society, and all the rest of it. It's no
I mean, they are spying on. I mean, basically, they make a load of things, but they completely ignore all sort of patent law and copyright law.
They steal the plans, they'll manufacture it, they then can sell it where they don't have to put the cost of developing it onto it.
Which we pay for,
which we pay for, and they can sell it cheaper. And that's what they do, and that's why they flood the market. And we're sitting there going, but we invented this, and that's out there. And that's been proven time after time.
Utter madness. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because the government, the Prime Minister, the Civil Service and the Crown Prosecution don't appear to know whether or not China is a threat to Britain's national security. Do you know? Do you have any clue? Do give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You're also welcome to call in on any other topic as well. Not that we've got to another topic, but I do want to get onto one or two very, very, very briefly. One is Rachel Reeves' budget. It's coming up. It's kind of racing towards us 6 weeks' time on November the 26th. And Rachel Reeves has done various interviews ahead of and after arriving at the IMF summit meeting in Washington. And basically she said, yes, that taxes on the rich will be part of the story of the budget. But don't worry, rich people won't leave. I mean, they've got super yachts, love. They've got homes in other countries. They absolutely will leave. How do we know this? Because in every country that has done more taxes on the rich, they do leave. Now, you know, the reality is very rich people are not like the rest of us. One, they're very rich. Two, they're very, very mobile.
Yeah. And the UK has lost more wealthy people than only one other country in the world, and that's
Which is that?
China.
Yeah.
Over the last year, and you know,
even Russia hasn't lost as many as us.
Exactly, and Rachel Reeves, it's interesting coming up to this budget. You know, she blames the Tories and said over 14 years of Tory control, they've left a £22 billion black hole. The black hole she's now talking about is £40 billion. So in less than 18 months, she's added another 18
But again,
billion
it's this
to
idea,
it.
people need, this whole idea the wealthy need to pay their fair share of tax. The top 1% pay 30% of income tax in this country. I don't know, what would be a fair... I mean, the top rate of income tax is 45 pence in the pound, plus... plus national insurance on a good whack of that first income.
Yeah.
I don't... How... I mean, is that not enough? Is that not enough?
And then the wealthy people tend to be running companies that are employing lots of people and are paying more tax. They tend to buy lots of high net worth goods. So they pay an awful lot of VAT. They tend to buy big houses, so their stamp duty and everything else.
They're spending money all the time. But this is a crucial thing for me as well. I know a lot of people who are very rich. I know a lot of people who are probably going to be hit if there are wealth taxes. The thing is, to a man and a woman, they've done it on their own. They come from ordinary background. Now, there are plenty of rich people who've inherited things, but they're not, you know...
But that's not the majority.
They're not the majority. And even in America, and again, as well, and as well, most people, they've done it on their own. If someone has got wealthy and has done well because they have worked really, really hard, and I mean the stress levels, that they mortgaged their home to start a business, they made something or provided a service that we want to buy. They're employing people. They built that company. I'm intensely relaxed about those people earning a shed load of money. Yeah. I want them to be taxed. I think they should be taxed at a reasonable rate. I'm of the view that when your overall tax rate is over 50%, I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong. I think it's disincentive. But they're already paying a hell of a lot of tax, and we need them to stay here. And they will leave. I know people who have left. We know what happened when France put in a 70% tax on a higher income. Literally thousands of the wealthiest people left. They leave the country and they don't come back until that tax disappears, and so you lose all of their taxes. It's absolute madness. I mean, but they're going to do it anyway. Just find it. One other thing, Prince Andrew, Virginia Giuffre, late Virginia Giuffre, who was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein and many of the men that he flew on his was it Lolita Express and went to his Rape Island. Let's call it what it was, Rape Island. And she's always claimed that she had sex with Prince Andrew on 3 occasions when she was 17 years old, not below the age of consent in this country, but she says she was trafficked by Prince Andrew, and she was told she'd done a good job and was given money even after having sex with Prince Andrew. He's always denied having sex with her, and denied that he ever met her, despite the photograph of them together with Ghislaine Maxwell, now behind bars for her role in those crimes. But also, of course, he never had sex with her, but he paid her about 10 million quid. The way you do to people you've never met who claim they've had sex with you. She's got a new book out. Her memoirs. It's out after her very sad suicide. A very common thing, sadly, among victims of sexual abuse, and a very troubled woman, as you would be after that life. But she says Prince Andrew felt sex with me was his birthright. This story will not go away.
Correct.
But neither will Prince Andrew. He refuses to skulk into the background. He clearly still thinks he's done nothing wrong, despite paying 10 million quid to the woman who claims he did.
Yeah, and this is where his brother, the King, I think will stand up and push him even further back. But it was interesting to see the body language between Prince Andrew and Prince William when they were together last. It's quite clear that if the King doesn't step up whenever Prince William becomes king, he will make sure that Andrew is put into the Tower.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that as well. The wealth taxes, Prince Andrew, you name it. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We'll get to your calls on China up next, and your messages too. Do you think China is a threat to this national security of this country? Tell us why you think it is. Tell us why you think it isn't, because it's rather bizarre that apparently no one in our government appears to know. This is Talk.
Where's the United Kingdom?
Behind you.
Where?
Oh, I'm here. Oh, there you are.
Very good.
Oh, stick kids coming forward.
People all came in like 20-minute notice.
Oh, he's come up to speak and Trump sent him away.
Others, and just so many others. And it's such a compliment to what we're doing, because what we've done is something very unique and very special. So it's perhaps the wealthiest and most powerful.
Right, cut him now. Cut that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:29 is the time. Let's go straight to your call. So 0344 499 1000. Mike is in County Durham. Mike, thank you so much for calling. Do you think China is a threat?
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
I definitely think China is a threat. Back in 1974, I'd been in the military for 3 years. I was faffing around in the Cold War, and I remember the black and white TV pictures, appropriately for pandas, with Ted Heath cuddling up to pandas, which was the start of what the British know as, and everybody else knows as, panda diplomacy.
Yep.
And that had started in 1972 when the Chinese schmoozled up to Richard Nixon, and he was the first one to get pandas, and then we got pandas later on.
And that was all about, if we had economic ties, then the military threat would mysteriously just disappear.
Of course it mysteriously disappears when there's money. Most of all these major issues, the phrase is follow the money, and there you will find the solution, and the cause and the reason.
So what do you think is really going on? Please don't libel anybody.
Well, I think we've just got ourselves suckered into total dependency on them, and I would suspect our masters are horrified at the thought that we might have to get divorced from them,
Yep.
Not only diplomatically to some extent, but actually economically.
Do you think they believe that that you could just have more economic ties? Because this has been the argument for years, like more trade with China, more trade with China and Russia and everyone else, and all this is going to somehow mean that the world's a happy place and we're all going to sing Kumbaya around the fire together.
Well, yeah, we can sing Kumbaya because we've managed to reduce our carbon emissions by exporting them all to China.
Absolutely.
And leaving them to make all the things that we would have pushed nasty old fumes out into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Sourced in Britain. We've left it to go over there, and now we can say, oh, we're only 0.8% of world emissions.
Yeah, well done us. We've got no manufacturing left. Oh, it's madness, isn't it, Mike? Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to David, who's in Exeter. Hi, David. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia and Philip. A question for both of you, particularly for Philip, because this is his area of expertise. So just on the national security issue at the moment, and whether that be with China, Russia or Iran, so the same across the axis here. Is Starmer and Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor, just delivering the illusion of national security with a known adversary? Or are they, what are they doing? If it is national security, what is it? Or is it just the illusion of it?
Philip?
Well, David, good to talk to you. From a political perspective, I think they're delivering an illusion of national security. But I've got much more confidence in what MI5 are doing and the counterintelligence operations that they're running, and they've got their finger much more on the pulse. The government, it seems, isn't listening to MI5, but they're dealing with the actual threat on the ground.
Correct, I agree with that. If we want to take that as the sort of in-service and then the ex-service that are particularly speaking out, Liza Manning and Buller and the former permanent secretaries there, Robin Butler, Mark Sedwell, ex-National Security Advisor, they're all chirping up and saying this isn't right. And you're right, Philip, the government is not listening. And I think this is the key bit for me is Dr. Fiona Hill saying we're at war. And we are, look at it in the overarching context, Julia and Philip.
Yep.
We're at war, and the Prime Minister and the National Security Advisor aren't delivering. They're delivering an illusion.
Yeah, no, all very fair points. And Philip Ingram's nodding away as well. Thank you very much indeed for that call, David. Philip Ingram is a former senior military intelligence officer. Knows what he's talking about. There's actually an urgent question on the collapse of the China spy case in the Commons right now. We'll find out details on that as they appear. We're going to take a quick break. We'll get to more of your messages. Also going to talk to the Conservative Shadow Defence Minister, Mark Francois, about this case. Oh, yes, wealth taxes and plenty more besides. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:36 is the time. Just to know, we've got an urgent question in the House of Commons on the collapse of that China spy case from Shadow Minister, Neil O'Brien. He's asking about some substance. Not a man of whom I'm a big fan because of his efforts to smear people who are making legitimate questions about lockdown, but he is a sharp guy in terms of detail. If he'd used his powers for good during lockdown, and rather than evil, we would be friends, as opposed to sworn enemies. But let's talk to somebody who's a friend of the show, Mark Francois, Conservative MP and Shadow Defence Minister, who joins us now. Very good morning to you, Mark.
Thank you. It's lovely to be back on the show.
Thank you for joining us. Well, the question that Neil O'Brien has just asked is, why didn't the government give the Crown Prosecution Service what it was asking for? And this is the thing that we're all finding very confusing, because let's face it, this is a complicated story. And as I've been saying, this isn't, did the Prime Minister go to a party? Did the Prime Minister accept free gear? This isn't that simple. This is about who knew what when, who had what conversations behind the scenes or not. But it fundamentally comes down to the claim that the Crown Prosecution Service wanted a particular bit of evidence from the government to pursue a case against two alleged spies for China. And the government didn't give them that evidence, but the person in charge of that was a senior civil servant who at no point bothered mentioning it to his political appointee boss or to anyone else in government. He just made a decision off his own bat, and that's the end of that. And nothing to do with us, Gov, never discussed politically at all. And let's face it, that just doesn't sound like that's what happened, is it?
Hey, Julia, I think you've actually summarised it far better than I was going to, so I won't attempt to repeat what you've just said. Look, the government, to paraphrase Mr. Spock, this is a government, but not as we know it.
Nailed it.
In some ways, it's not really a government at all, because a government implies some sense of collective purpose or endeavour. It's now effectively only a year and a bit in. It's a day-to-day crisis management organisation. And that's why here we are with a UQ in the House of Commons. Now, if we go back one day, yesterday at Prime Minister's Questions, the Speaker, who is desperately passionate about MP security, I think everyone accepts that, and that's why he's so angry about this. He effectively created a precedent when he allowed the Prime Minister to make a statement on this in his opening remarks at PM's Q. Yeah. So, I mean, normally they might pay tribute to someone who's died, but he gave him about 5 minutes at the start of PMQs to try and clarify the government's position. And then Kenny came back at him very hard.
Although, by the way, the Prime Minister, normally when there's a statement made, it's supposed to be given to the opposition in advance so that they can give a substantive response.
Yeah, so what happened yesterday was, well, I've been an MP for 24 years. I've never seen anything quite like that. But I think the PM and Labour wanted to use that to try and close it down. They wanted to give, quotes, the definitive answer and then hope that, you know, the caravan would move on. Well, completely backfired, and it actually led to more questions than it answered. And hence the UQ that's going on as we...
The urgent question. Don't use parliamentary shorthand. No one knows what you're talking about.
So it's like a little mini emergency debate. It's a good way of putting it. Yeah. And the person replying for Her Majesty's government is Chris Ward, the parliamentary undersecretary. He's been an MP for a year.
Yeah, OK, yeah, not around for a lot of this. Here's the thing, we can get into sort of parliamentary niceties. My audience and voters don't give two hoots about any of that. What they want to know is, did someone in government, civil servant or politician, or someone in the Crown Prosecution Service deliberately undermine the chance of there being a trial for two men alleged of basically, you know, spying for a hostile nation state? That's what they want to know. Was it, you know, was it just incompetence? I mean, totally believable with this government, or was it abject incompetence, or were they kowtowing to the Chinese? Did someone have a quiet ear? Is it men in grey suits in smoky rooms and, you know, those gentlemen's clubs go, I say, old chap, would you mind making this thing go away? It's a bit embarrassing. We're trying to do a trade deal with China. What do you think actually happened, Mark?
I think everyone can see what happened here, Julia. It's patently obvious, you know, to the man or woman in the street. The government are in terrible economic trouble. They're desperate for growth. They're desperate for contracts and deals with anyone they can get, but particularly with China because of the potential size of the market. So, of course, they didn't want this trial to go ahead. Now, everyone can see what is happening here. And I don't think this issue's going away.
Are you saying the government wanted the political wing of the government, not the civil servants, not the Crown Prosecution Service, you know, separate from political job, that they deliberately collapsed this trial?
Well, let's see what is said in the Commons. I mean, it's literally, I don't want to cut across what Nino Brand is saying.
I don't think there's much useful going to come out of this statement in the Commons, because this is the thing, because senior MPs, committee chairs and the like, met with the Director of Public Prosecutions, Stephen Parkinson, last night, and they came away, frankly, rather unimpressed with him, saying, well, you know, why didn't he go elsewhere to get the evidence? You know, we're going to be talking a little bit later in about an hour's time to the former boss of MI6. He might have been able to provide evidence of this threat. Why did he choose, for instance, not to go ahead when he said that he had 95% of the evidence, but he needed another 5%? You and I both know, we've seen trials, we've watched, I cover them as a news reporter in the actual courtroom, that have had less evidence that can be presented than we know about so far on this case, and yet those cases have gone ahead.
Well, let me put it like this. It would be politically advantageous to the government, albeit not the right thing to do, for that trial not to have gone ahead.
Yeah.
You know, and here's a government that still can't take a decision on whether or not to have this so-called Chinese super embassy at Tower Hill, that literally would sit on top of some extremely sensitive financial cables that, you know, I mean, they would be sitting on top of the lifeblood of the city underneath the embassy.
And the lifeblood of our economy.
Yeah. Now, look, you know, the public aren't stupid, Julia. Everyone can see what is going on here. And I think part of the problem of the current crisis management organisation masquerading as a government is that they've lost that most vital element in politics, the benefit of the doubt.
And that's
after the Mandelson affair and all the rest of it, the man or woman in the pub looks up at this and goes, that lot, nah, you got to be kidding. So they're now desperately trying to persuade an incredibly cynical public that we ain't done nothing wrong and, you know, move along.
But that's the thing. I mean, this is a complicated story, as I said at the start, and they're kind of hoping that most people, frankly, we've got lives, jobs, kids to get to school, supermarket shops to do. We don't really have time to get into the nitty-gritty of this. I've been reading up on it and following this case, and I struggle with some of it, and I think a lot of MPs do as well. But ultimately, we don't need to know who said what in which document when. It comes down to something very, very simple. Was there a deliberate political attempt to collapse a criminal trial, and either with a nudge, wink to the CPS, or deliberately, directing a civil servant to do something different? The throwing of a civil servant under the car, the car tyres, like, oh no, this guy, this Deputy National Security Advisor, Matthew Collins, is the one who made the decision. It's not believable. But people can smell a rat. That's the truth. People can smell a rat.
Yeah. If it looks like a duck and waddles like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Look, here's what the Deputy National Security Advisor put in his witness statement that was released overnight.
Yeah.
Right? The UK government is committed to pursuing a positive relationship with China and will cooperate where we can, compete where we need to, and challenge where we must. Here's the quote on China from the Labour Party manifesto. Yeah. We will cooperate where we can, compete where we need to, and challenge where we must.
Yeah.
Join the dots.
Yeah, that is a political statement, not one that would have been made by a civil servant who's apolitical, and therefore there must have been some political input. And when the Prime Minister says there's been no political input, well, that's clearly untrue.
Well, look, Julia, you summarised, if I may, a very complex who said what when situation in your opening remarks. And so really this comes down to, who do the public believe?
Yeah.
Do they believe that it just so happens that this trial collapsed and it just so happens that that was really convenient for the government in terms of desperately trying to get trade deals with China? Or do they believe that someone somewhere had a word? Yeah. And I think most of the public believe it's B and not A.
Well,
and let's remember who are we dealing with here, right? This is a Chinese regime that is authoritarian, that locks up 1 million Uyghur Muslims effectively in concentration camps, they call them education centres, for having the temerity to believe in God.
Yeah. Yeah,
this is what we're dealing with. Yeah. So I think, to come back to what you just said, I think this is going to run, and I just don't think the public. And by the way, Keir Starmer's net approval rating, the other day was -69. Yeah. Which is lower even than Liz Truss after the mini budget.
It's quite a feat. That's quite a feat. Yeah.
So are the public going to believe a man with a net approval rating of -69? No, I don't think they are.
No, quite right. And indeed, the question is whether we believe Dominic Cummings, but when he says that Chinese stole state secrets from Number 10 by buying up a company that basically controlled a data hub used by the government department to exchange classified information for years. And apparently, according to my guest, former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram, they absolutely did. Mark Francois, thank you very much. I'll let you get back to watching what's going on in the Commons. He's a Conservative MP and Shadow Defence Minister. Philip Ingram, again, as we say, it's a complicated story, but it does come down to just kind of the basics. Neil O'Brien, this government, is a Shadow Minister, has been asking the Cabinet Office Minister, Chris Ward, why didn't the government give the CPS what it was asking for? We need to know what was asked for by the CPS, why it was refused, and we must see all the correspondence and minutes of meetings. If not, people will ask, what has this government got to hide? All fair questions.
Very fair questions. If there was a simple answer to this, then the government would have given the simple answer, because it would make it go away. The fact that they're tying themselves in knots and things are dribbling out shows that they've got something they're trying to hide. Full stop.
Absolutely. Well, something that's definitely they're trying to hide in terms of the budget coming up is who's going to get their taxes going up. I mean, it's going to be pretty much everybody, I hate to tell you, but wealth taxes absolutely are part of the story. Who said that? Well, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. We'll talk to the economics editor of The Spectator about that up next. This is Talk.
given that direct extracts from the Labour Party manifesto have now appeared in the Deputy National Security Advisor's witness statement, this makes a manure heap smell positively floral and delicious. I was bobbing up and down throughout the whole of PMQs, and the question I wanted to ask, can the Prime Minister confirm, is China a national security threat, yes or no?
Yeah.
And regrettably, I was not called and therefore was unable to ask the question, but that is the question that needs answering.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Well, lots on the China spy case, and it is a complicated one. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think China is a threat, and why? Or do you think maybe you just don't care about the story? You'd rather talk about something else? Get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is our number to call. Or at one of our callers, David Early, if you want to ask a question, because Philip Ingram's here. He's a former senior military intelligence officer. He knows more about this than probably Keir Starmer does, so maybe worth putting a call in there. First up, though, let's talk about what we know about the budget coming up. What we know is there are going to be tax rises. We know this because, well, there's no choice for the Chancellor under her strict fiscal rules, but also because we just don't have any money left. But who's going to get taxed more? Well, taxes on the rich will be, in the words of the Chancellor yesterday, part of the story. Let's talk about this with Michael Simmons, who's economics editor at The Spectator. A very good morning to you.
Morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. So she's been away at the IMF, you know, as we've got those really pretty poor figures in terms of, I mean, we had, well, unemployment figures are bad, inflation figures are bad, the growth figures are bad, growth figures in GDP per capita, because we've had so much immigration, they're terrible as well. Nothing is going in the right direction at all, except maybe ever so slightly interest rates. That's nothing to do with the government, that's the Bank of England. So apparently the solution to everything is tax the rich.
Well, exactly, except it's not a solution at all. And as you say, nothing's going well. She claimed that the results from the IMF were good because it suggested that we'd be the second fastest growing economy in the G7. But as you point out, when you look at it by per capita, we're actually the worst. And she's not just getting bad news, she's actually unlucky as well, because a couple of Fridays ago, the OBR sort of closed their first forecast. And since then, we've actually had the borrowing costs reduced because the yields have dropped because of things that are going on in America. And if that had been factored in, that might have actually given her something like £3 billion, which you could use for, let's say, raising the two-child benefit cap. But no, she's stuck with this black hole of 20 to 30 billion pounds. She's, as you say, she's left with no choice because she's not going to do serious cuts but to tax her way out. The trouble is, with all these taxes on different groups, on pensioners, on the wealthy, on the banks, you just clog up the economy even more. These growth forecasts are going to get downgraded at the end of the year. They'll get downgraded next year again. And then before you know it, you're back into this situation where, again, you've got to fill, you know, with billions, and eventually you're going to run out of taxes you can raise.
Well, exactly. And they've had this big manifesto pledge, you know, taxes on working people. I mean, lots of different definitions of what a working person was, haven't we, over the last year or so? But basically, income tax rates, and VAT rate, the actual amount was charged, and the national insurance rates wouldn't change. But of course, they did change the national insurance for employers. They lowered the threshold. They raised the rate, and that cost, what, like £25 billion to businesses. And what a surprise, we've seen unemployment go up as a result. I mean, what a shocker to everybody that's been. But the idea is that they're going to tax rich, very popular among Labour backbenchers, very popular among Labour voters and many other voters. Those rich people over there, they've got plenty of money, they've got their Lamborghinis and their yachts and their homes in, you know, Monaco and wherever. What's the problem? They can afford it. But the reality is they can afford it, but they don't want to pay more. And if they are asked to pay more, we know what they'll do, because it's happened in every country that's tried it. They'll leave.
Well, exactly. Those with the broadest shoulders also have the longest legs, right? It's easiest for them to leave. I think probably most people in principle, as you say, would be like, oh, fine. Those who have done the best in society, those with the most resources, should pay more. But it's a myth to say that they don't. I mean, the top 1% are already responsible for something like a third of income tax. They're already paying a heck of a lot of tax, and most of them actually are willing to pay that tax. So we're not talking about, we're not some tax haven and we're suddenly going to say we're not a tax haven. We're a country where people are already prepared to pay quite high tax
Because there's a benefit of living in this country, because I'm looking over London now. It's a bit grey and miserable, but it is one of the greatest cities in the world. It really is.
Exactly.
Despite all its problems. But this is the thing. Again, a lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter if these people leave. Well, it will, because when those people leave, someone else is going to have to stump up the money to fund everything.
Exactly. If you look at the very, very top percentage of earners, if just one of them leaves, it takes over 1,000 people on an average salary to suddenly appear in the tax pool. And where are those people coming from? Because the birth rate is declining. The people that are coming here through immigration tend to be on lower, paid jobs. So they're probably not even going to make it into the tax brackets. And obviously the ones that are working illegally are probably not paying any tax.
Well, exactly.
Where does that money come at all?
People who say it doesn't matter if you tax the rich and it doesn't matter if they leave don't basically understand what the hell they're talking about. It's really that simple, isn't it? But quite apart from punishing people for doing well, if you're a country that punishes people for doing well, you know what people who are going to do well do? They sod off somewhere else. But also, another solution to all of our problems, of course, is Keir Starmer backing a global net zero tax on shipping. This is part of the UN's International Maritime Organization plan to impose a levy on ships that emit too much carbon dioxide, i.e. the ships that carry, we get those cheap goods from China, those ones, all that stuff is carried on these ships, and apparently they're going to have a tax on it. Of course, the effect of that tax will be to, what, lower prices or raise prices for us, Michael?
Well, exactly. Anyone can answer that. It's going to push prices up. And this whole carbon thing is another example of us pretending that we live in a world where we don't. I mean, this is literally cutting off our nose to spite our face. Britain should actually be quite proud of ourselves. We're the first country in the world that's halved our carbon emissions.
No, we shouldn't be proud of that. We mostly did that because we got rid of manufacturing and manufacturing jobs. It's nothing to be proud of at all.
Well, I think, but if you're of the mindset that this is an issue, then you should say, fine, we've done this, but we can stop now. We're only responsible for 1% of emissions. It's places like China and India are the problem.
I think you'll find we're responsible for all of the emissions because of the Industrial Revolution, which apparently is all our fault, although I would say to the world, you're welcome.
Well, quite.
But can I carry on? Apologies.
No. Well, this is the thing. Anything we do now, my point was that because we've gone that far, whether it's right or not, anything we do now is going to be so marginal that it makes absolutely no difference to the world. Yeah. It's just going to make our goods more expensive, it's going to cost people's jobs, and it's going to make our energy already more unaffordable when it's already the most expensive energy in the world.
I mean, it's brilliant. These people absolutely know what they're doing. There's no doubt at all about that, Michael. Assuming what they want to do is turn us back to the Dark Ages. That's the only explanation. Michael Simmons, economics editor at The Spectator, thank you very much for making sense of some of that madness. Philip Ingram, very brief word. Yeah,
well, we exported most of our carbon savings to China and they've doubled it and are putting more carbon out into the atmosphere. Wasn't that good?
The whole thing's just utterly mad. And again, people keep blaming just Ed Miliband for this stuff, these net zero things.
Ed Milli what?
No, but I'm sorry, Prime Minister ultimately, and the last lot, just as bad, by the way, just as bad. They got us into this mess. Anyway, plenty more to come, lots more of the China spy case. We're going to talk to Sir Richard Dilloff about that. He's the former head of MI5 and plenty more top guests as well. Sorry, MI6, sorry. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, we are the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock, and whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Don't forget, if you missed anything from the show or you miss anything a little bit later, you have to go out, have a job, have a life, that sort of thing. You can go to my YouTube page, easy to find, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, the government has published 3 key witness statements in the now collapsed case against 2 men accused of spying for China. Britain's Deputy National Security Advisor, he's the civil servant, Matthew Collins, gave evidence saying that the UK was committed to a positive relationship with Beijing, despite a list of attacks against the UK by Chinese-linked groups. The civil servant warned that China posed a threat to economic security and was carrying out large-scale espionage activities against the UK, but crucially stopped short of describing Beijing as a threat to national security. That meant that the case collapsed last month after the Crown Prosecution Service said they didn't have enough evidence on the question of whether China represented a threat to the UK. Well, there's currently an urgent question in the House of Commons right now about this, after documents were published last night in the wake of Prime Minister's questions and Keir Starmer being questioned, really quite hostile questioning from the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch. The question I'm asking you today is, given that the Prime Minister doesn't seem to know whether China is a threat to he's a threat to national security. China is a threat to Britain's national security, not the civil servant doesn't appear to know. The Crown Prosecution doesn't appear to know. But do you know? Is China a threat to national security? Yes or no? Tell us why you think it is. Tell us why you think it isn't. How significant do you think this case is? It's a very complicated case. It is not as simple as, did the Prime Minister get some free gear off his millionaire mate and failed to tell us about it? It's not as simple as, did a former Prime Minister go to parties while he was locking us all in our homes and not letting kids go to school? It's not as simple as that. But this does actually relate to the national security of our country. Perhaps rather more important. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 03444 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV, and you can also leave a WhatsApp if you want to, and calls are charged at national rate. Text cost 1, standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking about Hamas returning more hostages' bodies to Israel, but still blatantly in breach of the Gaza ceasefire deal. Also, the BBC's coverage once again called into question after incredibly sympathetic treatment of the Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli prisons being released, and the treatment of a crying sister of a Palestinian prisoner, completely forgetting to mention that her brother, Murad Abu al-Rub, was serving 4 life sentences for his role in a suicide bombing. Meanwhile, also, we're going to be talking more about what's going to happen in next month's budget as well, with those tax raises on the way. All that coming up. Delighted to say joining me throughout the show is Philip Ingram, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning again.
Very useful. I mean, it's always a good day to have you in the studio, but particularly good day to have you in the studio today. Later in this hour, we're going to be talking to Sir Richard Dearlove, the former head of MI6. Also going to be talking to the former director of the Institute of Physical Studies about the economic situation. Lots more top guests coming as well. We were saying again, and I don't want to, for those, I know some people just tune in for 20 minutes, some people are listening to the whole 3 hours. We don't want to sort of keep reiterating the same issue, but the China spy case ain't going away. No. Every effort by the Prime Minister and by security ministers and anyone and everyone, the Prime Minister's press spokesman, won't make it go away. We've got an urgent question in the Commons right now. So a sort of basically a mini debate going on in the wake of these 3 documents crucially being published by the government. The Prime Minister announced that at the beginning of Prime Minister's questions yesterday, and these documents were obviously meant by the government to sort of make this all go away. And the whole thing comes down to case against 2 men. Very, very simple. Christopher Cash and Christopher Berry, 2 men, one of whom was working in the Houses of Parliament, being accused. They've denied the charges of spying for China, handing them documents. The case collapsed against them. Why? Well, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the head of the CPS, Stephen Parkinson, says because we didn't get enough evidence from the government that under the law in which these crimes were alleged to have taken place at the time required the state that was handed any documents, if they would have had to be an enemy state. Now, Government says, well, it's not our fault, it's the Tories, because they didn't change the law in time. We've changed the law, it's not our fault. Then they've said, oh, well, it was the DPP, it was Director of Public Prosecutions. It was them. It was their fault. It was their decision. They are sticking to that line now. It was still the decision of the Director of Public Prosecutions. They also blame the National Security Advisor Deputy, Matthew Collins, who's a civil servant. And despite everything we're having, the Prime Minister is insisting there was no political influence. At no point did he or any government minister or any of their politically appointed special advisors, including his own National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, have any input to this. We're being expected to believe that a senior civil servant, very well respected, Matthew Collins, Deputy National Security Advisor for a long time, very well respected in all different parties within the civil service. He's been defended by two former cabinet secretaries, two former bosses, effectively, in the last few days, that he was being asked repeatedly by the Director of Public Prosecutions for evidence that could help them bring a case against two alleged spies. He just completely ignored their questions for months on end, decided off his own back without discussing it with anyone, his boss or anyone else, that he wasn't going to provide that evidence, and that's why the case collapsed. Other than the Director of Public Prosecutions says he had no choice. I mean, none of this is remotely believable.
If we were sitting in the pub at the minute, we'd discuss this, and I can't say the word on air, but I would be sneezing, and the first half of it would be bull. Because that's what we're seeing out of government at the minute. They're tying themselves in so many knots, and instead of...
Do they think we're stupid?
Oh, yeah, they do.
I mean, OK, fair point.
Yeah.
Good. Fair answer.
100% they think we're stupid because whenever it came to the planning for the election and getting in, they didn't do any planning themselves because they knew that the Tories had basically shot themselves in the foot, reloaded, shot themselves in the other foot, and Labour were going to win no matter what. So they've got no planning for government. And this is why they're going, as Mark Francois said, from emergency to emergency to emergency to emergency, because they haven't got a clue what they're doing.
Crisis after crisis. But this is the thing. I mean, this is like a really easy one. What I don't understand, it seems to me that there has been political interference.
Yep.
By either the National Security Advisor, political appointee of the Prime Minister, close to people like Lord Hermer, the Attorney General. His name just keeps on coming up, doesn't it?
Does the Chagos of any sort of relationship with China?
China keeps coming up in all of these issues, doesn't it? We've got the Chinese embassy, the super embassy. We want to put. We'd be able to probably see it on the other side of the river from this studio.
Shall we predict that it's going to be approved?
Tuesday is the day it's going to be. Well, the government has said they're going to look at it after the planning was not approved rightly by Tower Hamlets Council. Tower Hamlets Council makes one good decision once ever, but the government's going to probably change that decision quite insanely, in my view. Given the risk to the city and the cables that are underneath, and it's going to become a major spy centre for China, a hostile nation state, and yes, a threat to this country. The government admits that now it is a hostile state, even if they can say, well, at the time, the actual law under which these two men were being prosecuted doesn't actually, it states that a government had to be an enemy state and designated as such. There are plenty of people like, my guest in the next half hour, Sir Richard Dillon, who would happily have said that in court, and probably many others too. In whose interest is it that a case like this collapses, though?
It's in the interests potentially for the security services, because if the majority of the evidence is coming from intelligence means, then to present that in court and be cross-examined on it where some of the detail can be looked at how they've come by getting that. The intelligence services may not want to reveal that in an open court, and therefore it could potentially collapse through that. And I haven't seen the detail of the evidence that's there. There may have been enough there to secure a prosecution if the case hadn't collapsed, but the intelligence services tend not to like to have to stand up in court and say how they've managed to get everything.
And we often see that in other areas, prosecutions can collapse because of that. They don't want to do it.
It's not uncommon.
But does this basically give free rein to China to do whatever they sodding well please?
Oh, very much so. China's.
But did they have that anyway? I mean, Dominic Cummings, the former special advisor, chief staff to Boris Johnson, he has said, quite openly, that China stole state secrets from Number 10 for years. A blunder that allowed the Chinese to buy a company that controlled a data hub, which used by government departments. What the actual to exchange information, including highly classified projects. He said it went on for years.
China's integrated itself into our society completely. Anyone anyone that's wandering around with Chinese apps like TikTok or other things on their phone.
Do not have TikTok on your phone.
It will be taking everything that's off your device, and people are saying, well, that doesn't really matter. But if we look at a lot of the journalists that have got it, they will have their contacts that they don't want to get out. They'll have the emails of politicians. They'll have the numbers of other people in sensitive areas that they're using for stories. Those will then be used to build up the intelligence picture. Yep. And intelligence picture is all about, if we look at the TV screen, it's made up of pixels, and each pixel is made up of 3 different colours. Building the intelligence picture is gathering every single colour and then putting it all together. So it's little bits
and
all the
also
time.
Finding people that they think could be able to be compromised.
Yes.
The MPs we're going to be holding a formal inquiry into the China spying case, which has arisen from it. Basically, the Joint Committee on the National Security Strategy, they are going to investigate the case, and the committee chair, Matt Weston, has said, I'm pleased that the government has published the witness statements, but clearly there are a lot of questions yet to be asked in terms of how this came about. And the Joint Committee are going to hold a formal inquiry. That includes the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Home Affairs Select Committee, Justice, as well as others. Do you think we're going to get any more light shed on this whole murky affair by that?
There'll be some will come out. Most of it will come out from little leaks coming out the side of these committees. The trouble is the government has got such a large majority, and I have seen them control committees where when the committee votes on something, they will always vote the way the government wants it to go if they're going to control. The last Tory government did that.
Yeah.
This Labour government has done it on numerous occasions.
Let's play a little clip of the former Security Minister Tom Tugendhat, who's Conservative Security Minister. He's been speaking out on this issue. He's someone who's faced sanctions from China, along with Ian
and he's a former senior military intelligence officer.
Former senior military intelligence officer, quite by coincidence. And he was speaking in the Commons in this urgent question, this mini debate in the House of Commons in the last half hour or so. And this is what he has had to say about the China spy case.
My home has been broken into, my files have been ransacked, somebody has been put in my office by a hostile state, and 2 parties are playing politics with it. Yeah. This is national security of the United Kingdom, and yet here we have 2 individuals seeking to extract information from us. Yeah. And the government's response is not, as mine was, do everything you can to make sure the prosecution works, but no, process. Well, who the hell's side are you on? This isn't about the bureaucracy, this is about leadership. We're not sent here to be civil servants, we're sent here to lead the country and to make decisions. It is on his first outing to defend the indefensible. Because what he's got the position of doing now is to effectively say that he's not a politician, he's a bureaucrat, there's nothing he can do, and frankly he shouldn't even be here in the first place. Because that seems to be the Prime Minister's line. Yeah. Former Attorneys General have got up and they have prosecuted on the state's behalf. This Attorney General and this Prime Minister have said, not on my watch, not worth the effort.
Very, very damning words there from Tom Tugendhat. He's feeling it. He's been the victim of this.
Yeah, he has, and he's a former security minister. He's a former senior military intelligence officer.
He knows
what he's talking about. And he's right. The government, those that are in Parliament, are there to lead, not to put process in way of the decision making. That's what the civil service are about. They put process in the way of moving forward. The government has to get through that process.
Exactly. All right. So just some breaking news from France. I mean, talking of competent governments, Emmanuel Macron's appointment of his Prime Minister, the Prime Minister who just resigned, back again. He has managed to survive a second no confidence vote. So, yay, well done. Yeah. Still utterly unpopular. Yeah. Again, lots of very unpopular leaders who
Vive
just aren't able. Vive la France. Yeah. You think things are bad here, folks? Trust me. Anyway, look, should we turn our attention to other things? I do want to hear your thoughts on this and on anything we're talking about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. But let's talk about migrants, legal and legal, mostly illegal. Extraordinary revelations. I mean, the taxpayers are paying out £60 million for a private health firm to treat small boat migrants. Now it's over a period of 10 years. I thought the government was going to solve the small boats crisis, but for some reason we're expecting there to be huge numbers of them still here, able to access, private healthcare. I'm sorry, they're talking about taxing private healthcare in this country because for ordinary people who are saving up and desperately don't want to have to wait like a year with a knee that's painful for an operation, and the like. And yet we're paying out for a private firm to give healthcare to illegal migrants. Is this insane?
Completely insane. They're illegal migrants. If they have an emergency and they get taken into accident and emergency,
so we're a civilised country.
To save their life, we're a civilised country. Then we treat them, and no problems with that whatsoever. But whenever we can't get GPs appointments and we can't get basic medical treatment, having paid for it, and people in this country, but they're getting preferential treatment, it's wrong.
Just outrageous. I mean, how do they not see how bad this is? It's extraordinary. I suppose the idea was, these people are giving preferential treatment on the NHS, so okay, we'll get them to private healthcare. Are you kidding me? By the way, most of the people working in private healthcare are just they're
from the NHS.
They're from the NHS.
Yeah.
I mean, we've trained them up, for goodness sake. It's absurd. Also, after this speech yesterday, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, gave at a conference with Balkan leaders, talking about immigration and how our borders were not secure. It was pretty significant thing to her to admit. Nice, any government minister to admit the truth, of course. But British border officials are going to be sent to the Balkans to stem the flow of migrants. We know a lot of the routes through are through Greece, through Italy, and through the Balkan states, and that's been a big issue. I mean, the reality, though, I mean, what are they going to do, which the Balkan officials aren't able to do? They've got their own border officials.
Well, they have, but it's to bring a degree of backbone, and
but they don't have any power there.
Well, this is where you'll get more Europol and Interpol involvement in it, and all the rest of it. And there's a lot of influence can be put in. I remember serving in the Balkans, and there was one particular warlord that I was talking to. He came up in a very, very flashy car, which in the middle of a war is not something there. And I asked his driver where he got it from. And he said, his wives bought it. And I went, what do you mean his wives? Yes, his wives in Germany, in the Netherlands, in London. And he was talking about the women that have been trafficked for prostitution across the country. So the Balkans is a big source of the people trafficking into this country and the criminal gangs that are behind it. So it's right and proper that we put effort into there.
OK, fair enough. You think that's a good idea. Where are you on the grooming gangs inquiry? Because the Prime Minister is getting a lot of grief, quite rightly, over this, that this announcement of a national grooming gangs inquiry. I mean, he was dragged kicking and screaming to that announcement earlier this year. But months and months on, we still don't have anyone to run it. We still don't have the remit of that gang. And apparently the Home Office has said the search for a chair of the panel is still to be completed. And judges and lawyers are reluctant to lead the inquiry. Because, of course, they're going to get an awful lot of grief for all this. But I wonder also, they're just trying to get somebody who will, let's face it, be fairly sympathetic to the government. That's the reality, because Labour are up to their eyeballs in this. Yes, the people, the grooming gangs themselves are responsible for what they did, but failures by the police and social care as well. But crucially, local councils and local councils where the majority of these things were happening, frankly, were Labour local councillors, largely Labour controlled, not entirely, but largely Labour controlled. Failures of all parties on this front, but Labour are up to their necks in this. And there's no doubt at all to me that there will be some political wrangling going on. And we want someone who appears to be very neutral, but will be sympathetic. But anyone like that, if you want to be sympathetic when you're dealing with the Pakistani grooming gangs and the failure to tackle what went on, you're going to have to slam the government.
Yes. Well, and the other thing is, as soon as the inquiry starts, that means that then there's going to be national press interest in every turn that goes through the inquiry, and therefore that's going to bring it up to the surface of the headlines again and again and again, and the government doesn't want that. There's not one thing that is going well for them at the moment.
I mean, there really isn't, not one thing. But again, particularly not going well for the women who are the victims of this.
Well,
and again,
exactly.
more and more of them we see, they commit suicide. They are really struggling. This level of abuse, They
don't care about the re-traumatisation, because the inquiry is going to re-traumatise a lot of the victims.
Absolutely.
And therefore it should be done quickly, expeditiously, and get the answers.
The trials have often taken 20 years.
Exactly. Get the answers out to stop this. But they know the impact that that's going to have, as you said, on local government, on MPs in constituencies where there's an awful lot of these grooming gangs that are based, who do not have a big majority.
Yeah. And by the way, this is not a historic crime. It's happening right now.
Today.
And yes, it's happening in London. I don't know why, for some reason, our mayor in London doesn't seem to think it's happening. It's just uniquely London is immune to this. I mean, it's quite absurd. absurd, isn't it? Let's also talk about another alleged crime, and that is the Oxford student. Delightful little chap, Samuel Williams, is a little sort of incel-y, hopeless little loser. I'm sorry, you know these. You just look at these men, you just know. Oh, I'll put my keffir on. I'm the big I am, aren't I? I'll pose with my fake gun. I mean, these men are such inadequates. They're such inadequates. But he's a University of Oxford student. I'm particularly bothered by this because a fellow university alumni, and he's at Balliol College studying PP, same subject I did. Clearly, lower credentials to get in these days. But he's been suspended by the university yesterday over his chant, which repeated, "Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground," which was a call for violence against Zios is code for Jew. Or if you're going to say, let's be generous and say Zionist. Oh, okay, well, so anyone who believes in Israel and a Jewish homeland, that includes me. So you want me dead as well. Lovely. But this little beep, he has been arrested as well, and the university has suspended him pending this police investigation. It's interesting how many people I see online going, "Oh, look, absolute horrible little Egypt, serves him right." And then other people going, "Oh, he's a kid. He's a kid. He's 20 years old. 20 years old, he's an adult, right? He's an adult." He's a very clever young man who got into, would have got top grade. I mean, he's got 3 A stars at A level to get in to do PP at Balliol, Oxford. Simple as that, okay? He's not like, he's not on some DEI thing. He's a white kid. He's from the mean streets of Tunbridge Wells, right? He would have had to get those top grades to even be considered. He's made that decision to do this. Now, he's not part of the disease. He's a symptom of the disease. And it's all over the BBC, academia, it's in schools, it's everywhere, it's all over the internet, where this horrible, horrible disease of anti-Semitism is all over the place. He doesn't care 2 hoots about the Palestinian people. This was at a demo on Saturday after there was a ceasefire. He wasn't celebrating the ceasefire.
I bet you if you put him in the middle of Gaza and told him to stand up and say the same things, he would probably wet himself and be crying.
Absolutely. But this is the thing. Should he be punished or not? I mean, I believe in freedom of speech, but people say it's freedom of speech issue. It's not. You don't have the freedom to basically make death chants.
Freedom of speech doesn't mean absolute freedom to say anything and everything that you want at any time. There are limits, and those limits are defined in the law, and actually the laws in this country give people a wide range of where they can go to, that and areas that in many other countries you can't even get close to. He deserves to be dealt with as harsh as the law will allow him to be dealt with. It's a shame he didn't tweet it, because if he tweeted it, it wouldn't have been yesterday that he was arrested. It would have been a couple of days ago when his front door would have been kicked down.
If a lot of people, including me, hadn't said, I wrote a tweet, let's make this guy famous. I want to find out who he is. And if internet sleuths hadn't found him, there wouldn't be any action. There's barely ever any action against these people. There needs to be action. There needs to be consequences to their actions and their choices. I would like, as part of his punishment for what he's done, I want him to be forced to sit in a room and to watch the full unedited version of what Hamas themselves filmed of their crimes on October the 7th. I want him to see the reality, and I want him to talk like an expert, like Andrew Fox or someone like that, who can literally sit and explain to him why he is wrong.
He is the infectious pathogen of this disease, and therefore what he is doing is that he's infecting other people, and that's the trouble. And the only way to deal with that is to stamp out the infectious.
Well, as people messaging me yesterday, oh, he's a kid. Okay, A, he's not a kid; he's a grown man. But also, what about the kids? What about the Jewish kids? And again, I know girls myself who've not applied to certain top-notch universities because they've been advised by people they already know this is not a safe campus for you. That cannot be allowed to happen in this country.
Those same people who said, "Oh, but he's only a kid," will be the ones that are saying, "Isn't Greta Thunberg brilliant when she was 15 and standing up in the United Nations?"
Exactly.
Look at that. We have to all listen to her.
Oh, by the way, and we'll talk later on about Greta Thunberg claiming she was tortured and beaten while she was held captive. I mean, things that never happened. Number 4,782. 11:25 is the time. I'd love to hear from you. Give us a call on anything you want to talk about. 0244 499 1000. This is Talk.
The case went ahead when the Conservatives were in power because the MI5, all the institutions said categorically they pose a threat. In fact, MI5 said they pose the greatest threat to the freedom of the United Kingdom. The old twisted can't lie straight in bed man himself, he then absolutely refused to do this. Why? Because they're kissing the backside of China at the moment because they want a trade arrangement and they were desperately worried that China would get really hacked off with them for prosecuting them for spying. The Prime Minister is a dead herring, a kipper. He's well and truly smoked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:29 is the time. Let's squeeze in a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Your calls on China. I'm asking in particular, do you think China is a threat? Yes or no to this country? Because apparently the government can't work it out. James is in London. James, what do you want to say?
Hiya, Julia.
Hi.
Julia, I can assure you I listen to more than 20 minutes. I listen to your 3-hour show daily.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to listen to you.
We are honoured and appreciate it. Thank you, James. What do you want to say then?
Right, what I want to say is, first of all, we had Jonathan Powell. He wasn't present in this meeting. Then he was in the meeting. Then this meeting didn't happen. Then this meeting did happen. Now, I may be a cynic here, but the government let this case fall because the Chinese threatened to pull in their debt, to do a run on the pound just before the Chancellor does their budget. That's what I think. And our Prime Minister should resign, because if we lost a Prime Minister over a birthday cake, this one is nothing more than a disgrace, and he's bowed down to the Chinese because a run on the pound would prove that Chancellor inept, and the budget would have to basically be a doomsday budget.
Wow, that is quite something. By the way, we didn't lose a Prime Minister because of a birthday cake. We lose a Prime Minister because he was absolutely an awful, terrible liar, locked us in our homes while he and his mates partied. Sorry, it's so much more significant than that. But yeah, that's the thing. China have got a hold on this government. They've had a hold on the last few as well. That's the worry, isn't it? But is it just we want to do trade with them, or is it more than that, as you're suggesting?
I'm suggesting more than this, and I'm suggesting that the Kensington embassy is going to be approved. And I'd love to ask this government, with the secret Chinese police stations that we've got here, harassing the Hong Kong residents that we've got here, it's an absolute disgrace. It's a national security risk. They are an enemy state, and that trial should never have collapsed, but we know why.
Very interesting. He's saying it like this. There's a lot of nodding, James, coming on from Philip Ingram. Let's go to another quick call before we have to go to a break. Adrian is in Perth. Adrian, what do you want to say?
Hi, Julia. Nice to speak to you. I didn't believe it was 40 years ago, but I could see politicians sucking up or cozying up to China about 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's something Mike Graham said today on the radio, when he said he went in for a Burberry coat and it was £1,500, and then he went to Marks and Spencer's and got one for £89. What I was thinking was 40 years ago.
What's your point about that? Oh, because it was made in China, or?
Well, 40 years, yes. Everything now is made in China. And I remember being at university, as a university in Leicester, and I remember a big chain shop stopping a lot of their British manufacturing and going over to Chinese, and the quality went downhill, plummeted. And the chain story.
But we're just your argument basically. We are so economically reliant on China. Everything is geared on the fact, based on the fact that we're getting these cheap goods, and we can't upset them.
They would win a war without even firing a bullet, because all they have to do is stop exporting to us, and they've got total
But hold on a
control.
minute, they can't. China can't afford to stop exporting to countries that designate them an enemy state. Their entire economy is reliant on exports.
Absolutely. But just for example, just things like if you buy a car, there's so many Chinese components in it. If you buy a mobile phone, and I think they've got so much control over us now, they wouldn't have to stop all exporting, just certain parts.
Just the crucial things. Very good point, Adrian. Sorry, thank you very much, Steve, for that. 11:33 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Then I'll put some of that to our next guest, former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove. That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:36 is the time. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to our next guest. So Richard Dearlove, he's the former head of MI6 and joins us once again. A very good morning to you, Sir Richard.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, I mean, I think my guests, my audience won't be at all surprised to find out what we're going to be talking about in this interview. Question I'm asking my audience is do you think that China is a threat? And if so, why? And if not, why? Because according to what we've learned in the last few weeks about the collapse of this China spy trial, we're not sure whether the Prime Minister, the government, the civil service, or indeed the Crown Prosecution Service think it is. So what do you think?
Of course it's a threat to our national security. Gosh, do I have to explain it yet again?
I can feel the frustration, but this is the thing. We've just had a criminal case collapse based on that. That's the question.
The question is just so obvious that, you know, how on earth did the government get themselves into this dreadful tangle? I mean, it's shameful. And, you know, is it China helping Russia to sustain its war in Ukraine? Is it China stealing our intellectual property? Is it China running private police stations against dissidents in the UK? You know, I mean, I could just go on and on and on, you know, producing a list, let alone trying to recruit Chinese spies inside Parliament to report on the activities of British MPs and the establishment of policy towards China. It's just so obvious. The more explanation the government give to what happened, the deeper they seem to be digging the hole.
And this is the thing. But this is the thing. Are we? Can I ask you, as you know, former head of MI6, do you believe it is the case that the Crown Prosecution Service, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Stephen Parkinson, that they did not have enough evidence to pursue this case against two men, Christopher Cash, Christopher Berry, both of whom, of course, deny the claims against them, that they had 95% of the evidence from the government they needed that China was an enemy state as required under the law under which these men had been prosecuted, but that they couldn't find the other 5% enough to bring a prosecution? Do you believe that?
Not really.
OK. Do you believe that the decision not to provide the evidence that the CPS had repeatedly asked for was made by the Deputy National Security Advisor, a civil servant, very well respected by all accounts, Matthew Collins, very experienced and very well respected, without his decision that he made on his own, without any conversation with the political appointee National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, or anyone else?
Well, if you read the three statements, the witness statements that we have copies of, the first one was absolutely clear-cut. The second two offer some sorts of modification. Why were three statements produced? What was wrong with the first one? I just don't get what happened. I mean, I think when the DPP said he was lacking 5% of the certainty, then perhaps the government were over-enthusiastic about grabbing the opportunity to say, there's uncertainty, we can't go ahead with it. But 90%, 95%, I would have thought was enough. Particularly, what they had to do was to produce a heavyweight witness for a jury. It's the jury that decides.
I mean, you would have been a pretty good witness in that case. Would you have been given evidence about the relationship we have with China?
I could have done, but, you know, the defence would have said, you know, he's an old hand and he's out of date and what does he know? And I would have been rubbished because of my age. Probably that's the sort of tactics that you get in court. But on the other hand, they could have produced the Director General of the Security Service, who's been standing up, giving public statements about the security, the threat from China, saying, you know, it's one of the biggest problems that he has to deal with. So, I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. And the trouble is, it does look, it makes it look as though there's been appeasement of China, whether there has or there hasn't. And, it's either incompetence or there really has been appeasement of China.
And those are the only, this is the thing, those are the only two options, and neither of them is very, very good. I'm very much the view, having followed political affairs for many years, that never attribute to conspiracy what you can put down to cock up. But this is looking more like a conspiracy in this case, because so many opportunities to make this trial happen and allow a jury to decide. Do you think? I mean, look, you will know far more what happens behind closed doors, but in a dark corridor somewhere, men in grey suits, smoke-filled room or whatever, has a quiet word been had with somebody here in an ear here from an ear there, and actually the word has gone round. Can you make this go away, please? Is that what happens?
I fear that will be in the back of our minds. I mean, I said on another channel this morning, if it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck.
It's already been quoted this morning on my show by another guest, yeah.
It certainly is, and ducks have a certain symbolism in China that we all know about.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, I mean, it doesn't matter, China is sometimes a partner, sometimes a competitor, sometimes an adversary, and I think reaches maybe even the threshold of being an enemy in certain circumstances. And categorization in any of those things is irrelevant. Is it a threat to national security? And there is ample evidence in a multiple of fields that China is a threat to national security and has been for many years. And as Chinese power grows, they're getting bolder, they're getting more aggressive, they're getting more assertive. And quite frankly, what's ironical about this case is the massive publicity it's now got. If there'd just been a trial and the people had been found guilty, the Chinese would have been fed up.
Yeah.
There would have been a certain amount of shouting and everybody would have got on with a relationship which, frankly, has practicality. And none of us believe in isolating China. We all believe in trading with China. Of course we do. That's part of, the global commons. Anyway, you can see my frustration.
Well, I can absolutely feel it through the airwaves, absolutely. And this is the difficulty. It's very different from, say, dealing with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. We're talking about an adversary, a threat to us, who spy on us, who wish us ill, who we trade with. And our Prime Minister and other, people turn up in China and walk on the red carpet. We throw the red carpet out for the Chinese president last time he came years back. And we're desperate to sort of have good trading relations.
Well, during the Cold War, Russia was dependent on being supplied with grain from the West. I mean, its whole base of its food system partly depended on grain supplies from Canada and the United States. I mean, people just don't seem to understand how the world actually goes round in a practical way. But look, in this case, it's cut and dried, and the government have managed to make the most god-awful mess. And it's amazing with a Prime Minister who's a former DPP that was into this tangle. What incompetence.
But this is it. Is that level of incompetence, even in this government, believable over and above something else happening? Where are you on the Chinese embassy? Because out of my window from the studio, I can pretty much see the site where the Chinese want to build their new mega embassy. We've seen the plans. What's not been redacted in the basement? I wonder what's going to go on there. It's within a few metres of absolutely vital, confidential, critical cables for the City of London. Many are saying this could be, a major, the biggest Chinese spying hub in the Western world if it's allowed to go ahead. It was rejected by the local council, Hammersmith Council, and on Tuesday we expect a decision by the government, which many expect will be giving it a thumbs up, telling them to go ahead. What do you make of that decision, if that is the case?
Offer them a boggy piece of ground out in the Essex marshes. Why on earth do they have to build on a sensitive site in the city under which many important communications cables probably travel? I mean, it's just daft.
You say daft. Is it worse than that?
It's worse than that, yeah. But let's face it, they haven't got planning permission yet. And the good thing about this row is it's going to make the government very, very cautious about giving them planning permission. So they'll either kick the can down the road and we'll wait another year before they grant it, or they'll say no, or that's my hope anyway. But if they say yes, boy, there is going to be another furious boil-up.
And it's going to explode in their faces. This thing, it's not just the Labour Party. We've seen the Tories in power for 14 years, certainly under Cameron and Osborne, lots of allegations that...
Look, I've been equally critical of...
Yes, no, exactly. I'm just saying, but do we have a problem with our Western politicians, British politicians in particular, being in hot to the Chinese? You know, oh yes, you know, have the 5G network for Huawei, a Chinese company, get involved in our nuclear power, sell us all the solar panels, all the costs. Is there a problem that actually this economic imbalance means that any politician of any hue in government ends up being in hot to the Chinese?
Yeah, we've got ourselves into a very difficult position when it comes to electric vehicles, switching mechanisms in our national grid, all sorts of other things which we shouldn't actually be buying from China, or if we are buying them from China, we should be confident that they cannot be reprogrammed by the Chinese manufacturer. But, you know, look, that's another issue I could talk to you about for hours. I mean, you know, my advice is do not buy a Chinese computer on wheels, because you never know what the manufacturer might be able to do to it without your knowledge.
Very interesting. Sir Richard Taylor, former head of MI6 Security Department, thank you so much indeed for that. Nodding along to all of that, Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer.
You could tell the frustration in Sir Richard's voice and his demeanour, you know, with everything there. And you know, he was very, very clear. China is a significant threat. The other thing that he didn't bring out and people need to be aware of is China thinks multi-generational terms. Xi Jinping's in power for a long time. So everything that they do is what's called sub-threshold. So it's little nibbles. It's like, I liken it to eating...
But yeah, what benefit do they get from that this week? Nothing.
Nothing. They don't
or
care.
This month, or this year.
No.
But in 20 years...
Exactly. That's where the benefit is.
This is the problem. We don't think like that.
They're eating the elephant one little nibble at a time, and they're going to finish the elephant. Whereas what they're forcing our politicians to do is eat an elephant by swallowing it whole every day, by controlling what's going on in the headlines.
Loving that analogy. 11:47 is the time. Thank you very much indeed. Up next, we'll be talking about what horrors await us in the budget with the former director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, Paul Johnson. This is Talk.
Given that direct extracts from the Labour Party manifesto have now appeared in the Deputy National Security Advisor's witness statement, this makes a manure heap smell positively floral and delicious. I was bobbing up and down throughout the whole of PMQs. And the question I wanted to ask, can the Prime Minister confirm, is China a national security threat, yes or no?
Yeah.
And regrettably, I was not called and therefore was unable to ask the question. But that is the question that needs answering.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram still with me as well. Delighted to be joined now by Paul Johnson once again. He's the former director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Right, we're talking today actually about what your old organisation, the IFS, have announced in terms of basically where we are in terms of what's likely to happen in the budget. It's just 6 weeks away right now. In fact, just less than 6 weeks. How bad is it going to be?
Well, that's very much in the hands of the Office of Budget Responsibility. And we don't know. We really don't know what they're going to say. I mean, we do know some things, though. We know that the government's backpedaled on its welfare changes. That's going to cost them about £6 billion. And we know that interest rates are higher than was expected. That's another £5 billion. So we know we've got at least 10 or 11 billion of a, quote, black hole to fill. And it seems much more likely than not that the OBR will say, but we got our growth forecast wrong last time. We were too optimistic. Actually, we think things are going to go less well over the next few years. And that's going to be another, my former colleagues reckon, another 10 billion. So that's at least a 20 billion tax rise in the budget. And if that's right, and that's at the lower end of expectations, I have to say.
Well, I was going to say, we've been hearing 40 billion or even more than that.
Indeed, that is at the lower end of expectations. But what my former colleagues also said, which I think is right, is that that's almost certainly not going to be enough, because that would be just enough to give the Chancellor back her tiny amount of so-called headroom against her fiscal rules. And if she does that, then we're going to have the same awful speculation next year when we come up to the budget and, oh gosh, the forecast might have got worse, we might have to raise taxes again. So I think that she's almost certainly going to come for probably another 40 billion of tax rises like she did a year ago.
Which is a huge sum of money. And crucially also, she said a year ago, the Prime Minister said, we found this awful black hole. We're gonna deal with it now. But this is it. We're gonna take the pain now. And I think even Labour backbenchers was like, well, okay, we can get away with it once, but you're going to get away with it another year. I mean, and you mentioned the fiscal rules. This issue, you can't borrow for day-to-day spending. But the reality is she hasn't got a choice about her fiscal rules. She can't afford to borrow anymore. We're already paying, 110 billion a year just on the interest, servicing the debt we've already got. There's no way she can borrow more. But we know an awful lot of people are worrying about where those tax rises are going to come, because it's very difficult to raise that amount of money in taxes. And she's already been shown she can't do major welfare cuts, which is another huge area of spending that needs cutting, which could help balance the books. Labour backbenchers won't allow that, even 5 billion of it. And that was nothing. That was money down the back of the sofa. So where is she going to get this money from when they've got these manifesto pledges not to raise the taxes that hit all of us, the income tax, the VAT and national insurance on working people?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Taking all of that in turn, I think you're absolutely right. She can't borrow more. We're already paying more in debt interest than almost any other country. And as you say, it's well over 100 billion a year. Spending cuts. And it's interesting, there was a hint. I mean, there's not some Kremlinology here in terms of working out what's being said. There was a hint in what the Chancellor said this morning, but maybe she's thinking of spending, though it's very hard to know where she'd go, given that she's struggling to do anything on welfare, and we've already had the spending review. So maybe there'll be something on spending, but I'm sure the big part of it will be on taxes. And again, we've had some, looking at the details, reading between the lines of what's been said. I mean, there was some hint a week or two ago, wasn't there, that the manifesto commitments stand for now, which suggests that maybe I'm sure they've been thinking about whether they'll change them. And then the Chancellor this morning sort of yet again saying, we'll come after the rich or the wealthy.
Wealth tax is part of the story. Yeah, part of it. But this is the thing, and we talked about this a little bit earlier as well, that, you know, it's very easy for a lot of people. Again, Jeremy Corbyn, his entire, you know, shtick in 2017 and 2019 in his manifestos was, we're going to have loads more spending on everything and we're just going to tax those people over there. The trouble is, there aren't enough of those people over there, those rich people, and also, crucially, the ones that are very, very rich, should be taxed a lot, tend to leave if you tax them too much. Then you have
I think that's exactly right. And it is worth remembering, and this is something that neither party want to tell you, that the last government really very, very significantly increased taxes on high-income people. Yeah. And they were very, you know, quite socialist, quite honestly, in the way that they did that. I think if we do want 40 billion, I think it's almost impossible to see that you get 40 billion without, I'm afraid, hitting people on ordinary incomes, without doing something with income tax, national insurance or VAT. And I think if you try to get 40 billion through fiddling around with capital gains tax and inheritance tax and council tax and I mean all these other smaller taxes, you are going to make a right mess of the tax system, an even bigger mess than you've got at the moment. You come after the pension saving, which you know, we want more saving, we need investment in the economy. You come after that. That's going to be incredibly complicated. But you know, I'm sure the Chancellor's thinking about it, because there's lots of money in pensions. You certainly can't get it through a wealth tax. That's never worked anywhere ever. So if she's looking at that kind of number, she's going to really struggle to do that without coming after ordinary people, I'm afraid.
And that's it. And people already, as we've seen latest figures, you know, in terms of our lowest growth in standard of living for people, we've seen GDP, looks quite good when you look at GDP in G7 countries, but until you do it per capita, per head of the population, well, after you import 2.5 million new people, funnily enough, we're at the bottom of that ladder, not near the top. And the reality is, people know when they're poorer. They know they're not better off. They know if they get a pay rise, it's eaten up straight away in inflation, and a lot of the taxes they're looking at, I mean, anything on business, that's just going to be passed on to the consumer, which is working people.
Well, we know that, and actually the reason that the Chancellor went for this big hike in employer national insurance last year was the sense that people wouldn't notice it so much. But actually, we know that it showed up in inflation. I mean, that's actually one of the things that's pushed through into higher prices and lower growth this year. So in the end, if you put tax on business, if someone has to pay it, and in the end, it's usually the employees or the consumers who end up paying it. And that's exactly what we've seen this time around. So you can sort of hide it, but you can't hide, as you say, from people that it's not just over the last couple of years, it's over the last 15 years. We've barely got any better off. And I think that underlies a lot of the people's fed upness with politics, because for the first time, in at least half a century, and probably in a century, for the first time in a century, you've gone a long, long period of time without people feeling any better off, and that makes them really pretty fed up.
Yeah. And we've seen that across Europe, we're seeing that in America as well, and that is the thing. People are paying higher and higher taxes, and they don't feel they're getting anything for it. Paul Johnson, great to hear from you. Always appreciate that. Former director of the IFS there. Philip Ingram, I mean, who would want to be in Rachel Reeves' shoes? Her ugly shoes right now, but she got herself into this mess, and this is the trouble of having people in charge of the economy who don't understand how an economy runs and have never run a business.
Exactly, and she kept going on about how she inherited a 22 billion black hole. It seems to have increased to 40 billion in her watch. It took the Tories 14 years to get 22. She's done another 18 billion on top of that in less than 18 months.
Just don't add up.
They don't add up, and it shows a level of incompetence.
She can't borrow anymore. You can't just keep taxing and taxing and taxing and then having spending going.
Exactly.
That said, British taxpayer, British voters need to be honest with ourselves. You cannot keep expecting to have all this money just thrown out on everything.
We need to
and not pay the taxes. We are going to need, epic levels of cutting to get ourselves back on the straight and narrow. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. China spy case, everything else. Do stay tuned. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. You are with Talk, and thank you very much indeed for joining us. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, always great to have your company. Don't forget, if you missed anything of the show, do go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, I'm going to be talking more about the China spy case. We are also going to be talking more about what's going on with the latest in the Middle East and that Oxford student who's been arrested and suspended from Oxford University over his chance to put the Zios in the ground. And we're also going to be talking about the British border security officers who've been dispatched to the Balkans for the first time to help tackle illegal immigration as talks continue to open migrant return hubs in the region. And also viewers have called on the BBC to make their programming less diverse rather than more. Members of the public submitted their concerns to the broadcaster as part of a nationwide audience survey. Maybe, I don't know, have BBC coverage that actually represents the country as it is, as opposed to what the BBC would like it to be. Is a mad idea, eh? Anyway, coming up, all of that, your calls as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Asking you particularly today, yes, you know, you can call in on any of the topics we're talking about. Given that the Prime Minister, the Civil Service and the Crown Prosecution Service don't appear to know whether or not China is a threat to Britain's national security or not, I want to know from you. Do you think China is a threat? Why do you think it is? Why do you think it isn't? Certainly the former head of MI6, Richard Dearlove, I mean, he just sort of laughed at the question. Well, of course China is a threat, he said. What are your thoughts? 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Joining me throughout the show today, and rather a good day to have had him in. Not there is ever a bad day to have him in. Nigel, well, not Nigel, why do I say Nigel? Philip Ingram, changed his name. Philip Ingram is one of his alter egos. Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer.
Yes, you promised never to call me Nigel.
Nigel, why did I do?
Yes.
That's his real name. Why did I do that? Oh, I'd be the most awful, useless spy. Just before we go to our next guest, just a development we've got. On this China spy case, we have had an urgent question, a mini debate in the House of Commons about this China spy case collapse. We now know that senior MPs are going to be holding a formal inquiry into this, bearing in mind that when you're asked questions in detail, you know, and by select committee heads, you have to answer, and you, same as on the floor of that, you can't lie. You have to be honest. There's also been a demand for basically all of the documents involved in this, the minutes, the meetings, the requests from the CPS, the replies from the government related to this case to be published. Each time along the way, the government's gone, oh, it's not our fault, nothing to do with us. CPS don't want us to. CPS have gone, oh, this time, no, by all means, have all the documents. It's absolutely fine. Publish what you want. Philip Ingham, do you think that we will have any more light shed on this issue?
Well, there'll be a lot more light will come out. It'll leak from the sides, because this is going to keep this at the top of the headlines for quite some time now. And therefore the government, having hoped it's going to go away, and they've tried every tactic to make it go away, have just put it into a point where they're going to be held to account more and more. Will the committee actually bring anything out that is going to criticise the government? Probably not, because the committee is controlled by the government.
Not much faith in that then. Very interesting. Your thoughts? Get in touch. 0344 499 1000. I'm sure you want to get in touch about what my next guest has to say as well. Jake Wallace-Simons is the author of Never Again, How the West Betrayed Jews and Itself, and joins us once again to talk about, well, all things at home and abroad in relation to Gaza. A very good afternoon to you, Jake.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. There's a lot I want to talk to you about. Can we talk first of all about this Oxford student, this delightful soul, Samuel Williams? We discovered yesterday, I was delighted on air to learn that he had been arrested by the Metropolitan Police. I and many others have said, hey, let's make this guy famous after his horrific chants of, you know, Gaza, Gaza, do us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Apparently he'd been workshopping it at Oxford. We discovered he was at Balliol College, Oxford University, studying PPE. I mean, I'm ashamed and embarrassed that this Egypt got a place at university with such stupid views. But he's now been questioned by the police. He's been suspended by the university. Should that have happened?
Well, I think that sadly his radical views probably helped him get a place at Oxford, because there's quite a lot of radicalism there. He's not actually that unusual at Oxford, and indeed at other universities up and down the country, which have been taken over by radical views increasingly since you and I were there some years ago. And you know, it strikes me that really something needs to be done before this gets worse. It's pretty bad right now. Students are flying Palestinian flags, waving kafirs around, refusing to go to lessons, disrupting graduation ceremonies and all the rest of it. And the authorities are just sitting back and letting them get on with it. And I think that universities should be depoliticised. There should be a zero-tolerance attitude towards this stuff. Do any of that, and you'll be sent down, rusticated, expelled, and you'll lose your tuition fees.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way forward.
I mean, again, certainly in the case of what he was saying, you know, put the eyes on the ground, he's not just talking about Jews. Yeah, it's code for Jews. That's what it means. Who are we kidding? Zionists, but, you know, including people like me, you know, who support the rights of Israel to exist. He wants to bury me, presumably after I'm dead. I mean, this is the thing. It's not a freedom of speech issue, is it? This is very much about, you know, you don't have a right to call for people to die, you know, but you can express your views without being threatening to other people. And bearing in mind this was at a protest for the Palestinian people, apparently, after a ceasefire was called. So not quite sure what they were protesting at that point. But here's the thing, is he part of the problem? Is he just a symptom of this? Because this has been allowed to explode on our campuses, same as in America as well, and particularly on elite university campuses. And it's almost been considered sort of acceptable in a way that you can intimidate Jewish students and students who support the right of Israel. But if you misgendered someone who claimed to be trans, you'd be out on your ear. We've literally spoken to people, guests on the show, who've lost their university places because they've done that. This sort of, again, two-tier justice within universities.
Yeah, I think we need to be clear that when he said Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, he wasn't talking about Gaza as a whole. He was talking about Hamas. Yeah. Because the only people likely to put any Israeli soldiers in the ground is Hamas, not the civilians of Gaza. So he's saying, and the civilians of Gaza, as we know, are being murdered, tortured, abused, oppressed by Hamas now, as we speak, as they have been for many, many years. So he is clearly aligning himself with Hamas, which is a criminal offence in Britain, supporting a proscribed terrorist group. And the reason why this sort of thing keeps happening is because the universities have not drawn a line and said no. They need to be saying, thus far and no further. You're not allowed to behave like this. It's not a free speech issue. It wouldn't be a free speech infringement for universities to say that one of the conditions of being a student here is that you don't disrupt lessons, disrupt classes, disrupt the running of the institutions, and you don't bring us into disrepute. That's not a free speech issue. That's perfect common sense. But the fact that the authorities have not stopped this has emboldened these young communists and allowed them to run riot, ruining the experience for everyone else, intimidating Jewish students, and bringing their views into the mainstream with impunity. I think it's got to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more on that. What also has to stop, I think, is the BBC and many others. Blatant, I mean, they call it disinformation, misinformation, blatant lies, deliberately misleading their viewers. And we see it, I mean, on social media, the lies just absolutely been spreading like poison about what's happened in Gaza in the last week or so with the ceasefire and the exchange of, in some cases reported by the BBC, exchange of hostages, claiming somehow that the people who've been held underground in tunnels, starved and tortured for the last 2 years are the same as someone who has been convicted in an open court of a terror attack, killing people, and is held as a Palestinian in an Israeli jail. And then somehow there's a moral equivalence. But some of their coverage has really gone beyond the pale, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's inaccurate and unprofessional to draw an equivalence between the Israeli innocent hostages and Palestinian hardened prisoners who've been imprisoned for life sentences because they've masterminded suicide attacks. Those two things are not the same. Now, when you go to the Palestinian street and you see scenes of jubilation welcoming these murderers back onto their streets, the BBC says, look, to Palestinians, they're heroes, and to the Israelis, they're terrorists. Who knows what's the truth? Well, the BBC should know what the truth is, because it's doing the audience a disservice by not saying that these Palestinians are celebrating jihadi murderers. That's the truth. and they're not the same as innocent Israeli hostages who've been kidnapped against their will, held underground as bargaining chips. The two things are not the same, and it's only professional to give the truth to audiences, not a kind of mealy-mouthed, both sides of the mouth kind of liberalism, which doesn't get anybody anywhere.
Well, indeed, there's one particular bit of coverage, and very sympathetic sort of, this crying sister of one Palestinian prisoner who'd been released, and how wonderful it was to have him home, but they'd been separated from him for, so many years. Completely easy mistake to make, forgetting to mention that the brother she was crying for was Murad Abu al-Rub. He was serving 4 life sentences for his role in a suicide bombing that killed people. I mean,
that's right. Yeah, I mean, it was
stuff.
Exactly. It's a suicide bomb that killed 4 people in 2006 in Kedumim. And I just wonder, if you had lost a relative in that suicide attack and you saw the BBC's coverage of this man being released, with his sister anguished, talking about how awful it's going to be, she doesn't know what size clothes to buy him, he hasn't seen him for so long. If you were a relative who'd lost a father, a mother, a brother, a sister in that attack, how would you feel at BBC's coverage of that?
Exactly. I mean, also there was one man that pictured who was a double amputee. And people go, it's a double, this terrible, this poor victim. He's a double amputee because he was a suicide bomber, blew off his own legs. And why was he still alive? Oh, because he'd been saved by Israeli medics. I mean, this is the extraordinary thing.
Exactly. I think we need to call it what it is, which is propaganda, I'm afraid. And not just propaganda, but also incitement, because the more the BBC, other media outlets portray Israel as the demonic bad force in the world, the more violence against Jews is likely to happen in Britain, because that's what it is. It's incitement to violence.
Well, indeed. I mean, just before we go to actually what has been happening, and there has been a lot of violence in Gaza since, Keir Starmer has been speaking at the Community Security Trust, and this is the body that had to be set up to keep Jewish people safe, to protect synagogues, Jewish schools. It's quite extraordinary that body has to exist. And yes, I know that there has to be bodies to protect Muslims and mosques as well. Both, but it's absolutely appalling that both should ever need security in this country. I'm ashamed that is the case. But Keir Starmer asked the government's independent anti-Semitism advisor, that's Lord Mann, to conduct a review of the NHS, as we've seen some extraordinary examples of doctors, one of whom I've invited on the show, but for some reason just chooses not to come. Even though she said she was horrified that she was banned, she wasn't able to come on shows like mine. Well, come on then. You've had the invitation. I've DM'd you. But basically, some real concern about a number of doctors speaking publicly on social media, in public forums, saying, not discussing their support for the Palestinian state or their anger with Netanyahu as a foreign leader of a foreign government, but blatantly open, horrific anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I mean, that doctor in particular that you were talking about was tweeting a lot about Jewish supremacy and its reach into government and the NHS. I mean, this is clearly old-fashioned anti-Semitism that we've experienced for hundreds of years and had echoes in the Third Reich, frankly. It was that sort of Hitler-level anti-Semitism that she was spreading. And to think that these people are doctors, and if you're a Jewish patient, or actually any patient,
I don't want to be treated by her.
Exactly, to be cared for, as it were, by somebody who... I think she's mentally ill. I think she is mentally ill. I think people like her are mentally ill. I mean, I know anti-Semitism is a sort of mind virus, but it does seem that some of these people are just unhinged. The level of vitriol and hatred, and the fact that they feel that the world should be listening to them. The world's got it wrong. The world should be more hateful towards Jews. That's where we're going wrong here.
Well, you and I are being paid our 7,000. I've yet to work it out. I keep asking people. My accountant keeps asking, is it 7,000 shekels, $7,000 or 7,000 pounds that we get paid every time we shill, apparently, for Israel? I mean, that's what these people seem to genuinely believe this stuff. It's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, they do. I mean, in the old days,
I'd be at work anymore? I'd be a billionaire by now. I wouldn't be at work. I'd be eating chocolate on the beach.
Yeah. I mean, in medieval times, they believed that Jews had horns and a tail. In the Second World War, they believed that Jews pulled the strings of the money markets and all the rest of it. And now they believe this. It's just the same sort of stuff coming back to us. And the real problem is that the NHS isn't taking strong enough action against these people. There have been a few cases where they've been brought to a tribunal and actually acquitted, allowed to practice again, which just encourages them and emboldens other people to go public with their anti-Semitic bile. And these are doctors. These are doctors. Yeah. It's making people not just feel unsafe, it's making people unsafe, actually unsafe in the NHS.
I've seen a lot of messages from people saying as Jews they've actually hidden that they were Jewish in hospital because they were so fearful. That, again, just totally unacceptable, like what's happening on our campuses. Let's talk about what is happening in Gaza right now, because a lot of people hating the ceasefire, a lot of people saying that Donald Trump may have sort of, you know, gone a little bit too big with his early with his celebrations. But we did see the return of those 20 live hostages. We have now seen, well, some of those murdered hostages' bodies returned, but it's not looking hopeful in the next few weeks of getting all of them back. But we have also seen horrific scenes played out quite deliberately in front of the cameras by Hamas terrorists of open executions, mass executions of people who they consider to be, well, should we say, problematic to Hamas remaining in power in Gaza. We have seen IDF soldiers warning and then shooting, people deliberately crossing the border into the territory that is IDF control. What hopes do you have now that there will actually be a ceasefire that continues, that the war is over, and that Hamas can ever be removed from Gaza?
Well, I mean, one of the extraordinary things about Hamas is that it never hides what it's like. It filmed October the 7th on GoPros. It's filming these executions and torture now, broadcasting them around the world totally shamelessly, and yet people in the West see that with their own eyes and think, they're just responding to Israeli oppression.
He said, she said.
They're not really that bad. They make excuses for Hamas that Hamas doesn't make for itself, And I think that in that context, the idea of peace somehow breaking out is quite distant, because Hamas clearly remains very much in control of Gaza, meting out its vengeance against rival clans and that sort of thing. And while Hamas remains armed and in control of Gaza, it also, I'm afraid to say, remains a threat to Israel in the longer term, because it's, again, been open about its desire to carry out October the 7th again and again and again. It's not joking about that. That's what it wants to do.
This is the thing.
Until Hamas is destroyed,
when Hamas tells us who they are and what they want to do, the West's apologists for Hamas choose, no, they don't mean it really.
Exactly.
Of course, Israel and the people living on those borders, they absolutely know they do mean it, because they are still living and their loved ones have died as a result of that. But this is the thing. You know as well as I do that Hamas are going to deliberately provoke. IDF may or may not be sent back in, or I don't know what the Israelis would do in any other scenario. What else could you do? And then Israel will be blamed for being the aggressor once again, and many Western governments will also wag their little fingers. There isn't a single government in this world that would put up with having Hamas on their border saying that they wanted their destruction and that they do October the 7th again. Not a single government in the world. Why do people think that Israel should put up with that?
Exactly. I mean, the almost funny thing is really that Israel's blamed for everything. I mean, you even see Israel being blamed for Hamas's violence against Palestinians right now. By saying that Israel somehow created this division in Palestinian society or fomented it, is to blame for it. But the only thing Israel's to blame for is withdrawing from Gaza in 2005 and giving Palestinians charge of their own destiny, their own strip of land. And look where that got them. So Israel, people are going to blame Israel whatever it does, and that's the conclusion that Israel has. I mean, people talk about Israel having poor PR. I think Israel's given up, frankly, because it knows that people are going to condemn them whatever they do. So it's given up trying. It's just going to, fight to defend its citizens and do what it knows is right.
Yeah, it doesn't matter about PR war. It's winning the real war. Just finally, in terms of their own little wars, Greta Thunberg and her little Gaza flotilla, they've taken hostage apparently, and then they were released. Some people didn't get their medication, and we are told again. But the Swedish activist has now accused Israeli guards of not just defacing her suitcase with the words "whore Greta," drawings of a penis and images of the Star of David. She said she was hit, kicked, starved and tortured during her time in Israeli custody, which is a bit bizarre given that she didn't mention it when she was first free, when she was dancing around arms up, and she looked remarkably well and bruise free for someone who had been beaten and tortured all that time.
Yeah, my favourite quote from her alleging this abuse was, "Then they ripped my frog hat off, threw it on the floor, stamped and kicked it."
I mean, if that isn't worse, a UN Security Council, vote, I don't know what is. But the general thing is, what's interesting is actually, she said this, and you can actually feel that the world's media has gone, yeah, we don't believe you. She is absolutely, I mean, when there have been undercover videos on the flotilla of these people basically saying, you know, we lie, this is what we do, we lie. I mean, no one believes a word this silly little woman who knows less about Gaza and the Middle East than she does about climate change, and she knows sod all about that. No one believes a word she says. I mean, they just undermine themselves, in which case they're doing our work for us, aren't they?
Well, sort of, but she's still getting the headlines, though, isn't she? I mean, you know, this was the whole point of them going. It wasn't anything to do with delivering any food to anybody.
There was barely any food on the flotilla.
Yeah, I mean, Israel delivered 40 million meals in the period where the flotilla was at sea. They brought over a few cans of stuff that didn't get anywhere. You know, it was ridiculous. It wasn't about that. It was about creating this kind of PR, as it were, for Hamas, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
They're acting as activists on behalf of Hamas, whose interests they are clearly serving. And they're willing to exaggerate, to lie, to create these dramas for that sake. And a lot of people do buy it. I mean, I know you're saying that the world's media didn't believe them, and you and I didn't. It's obviously a load of rubbish. But a lot of people do. People on social media, a lot of kids are influenced by this stuff. And it's quite pernicious, and it really is working, astonishingly, for the agenda of the jihadis who would kill them if they got half a chance.
Yeah, that's the irony, isn't it? Oh, we live in troubled times. Jake Wallace-Simons, it's always good to talk to you, try and make sense of some of it. Author of the brilliant book, Never Again, How the West Betrayed Jews and Itself. Former booker, Israelophobia as well, also an absolutely brilliant read. All both of them, you know, published great prescience ahead of these awful attacks in Manchester at the synagogue, but also ahead of October the 7th as well in 2023. Philip Ingram is still with me, former senior military intelligence officer. It is kind of soul-destroying to look at. I try to not spend too much time on social media, and every now and then I just get really frustrated, and I feel I need to take on a lot of the lies that are out there, stuff that's so blatantly, obviously untrue. I mean, just blatant untruths. But again, that old line about, you know, a lie has, you know, gone halfway around the world before the truth has got its boots on.
Oh, very much so. And to stop the critics coming in, just to clarify a point that you made earlier, you talked about the individuals being released, having been convicted and everything else. There were a large number that were detainees who had not been through a court process.
A point I've made on the show before.
Yes, but that's normal in a conflict situation. You know, whenever I had to sit on a Sunday afternoon and review all of the detainees that we had in Iraq, none of them had been through a formal court process.
Because you're in a war.
And that happens in conflict.
Yeah.
And
also they talk about children. We talk about 16 and 17-year-olds.
Yes, exactly.
Often, by the way, who are used. I mean, we know that Hamas uses, you know, even sort of 10-year-olds, you know, with bombs.
And children in conflict and all the rest of it. You know, I had friends and colleagues who in Sierra Leone, when that happened, you know, came up against a drugged-up 12-year-old with an AK-47 pointing in their face, and were having to make a decision as to what do you do, knowing full well that that's a child in front of them. Yeah, a child can pull a trigger in an AK-47.
That's the reality. Oh, it's absolutely awful, isn't it? I mean, it's interesting. Keir Starmer, though, talking about you know, tackling this, what's going on in the NHS. Again, just sack them. It's not complicated. I don't understand. You know, here you are on video. Is this you? Did you say it? Did you write this social media post? Did you make this speech? Right.
Bye.
Then bye. Why do we need a review that'll take another year as well? And also, he did comment also at this event on the University of Oxford. He's saying that it had been slow to deal with a student accused of anti-Semitism. He says university should not be a place where Jewish students fear even to go, in some cases not wanting to go to university. And I've got a friend of mine, kid in that situation, to have the education they're entitled to because they are Jewish. We have to stand up to that. Some universities have been too slow. I mean, you know, you could have got involved. There's quite a lot of people on my side of the debate, the free speech debate, have been trying to get. Again, you don't have your freedom of speech doesn't include the right to intimidate people.
And if the university's been slow, oh my goodness, how slow has the Metropolitan Police been in arresting them?
And the only reason this young lad has been arrested is because a lot of us. I wrote to be going, let's make him famous.
Correct.
Let's keep it on the front pages. By the way, another development in the China spy case. A former director of public prosecutions. This is Lord MacDonald. He has hailed in on this China spying case, saying he has no doubt that there was sufficient evidence for the Crown Prosecution Service to proceed with the case against the two men, Christopher Berry, who've denied any guilt, of course. And he said that the witness statements provided by the Deputy National Security Advisor gave clear evidence that China is a threat to the UK national security. This is looking very difficult, not just for the government, but also the Director of Public Prosecutions, who is sitting in the job right now, Stephen Parkinson, who clearly there's no love lost between him and the government. I mean, and he, by the way, has made statements before about how average and inadequate the last DPP was, you know, this particular one, meaning Keir Starmer. There's something more going on here.
The mess is getting worse and worse and worse, and as the government tries to dig uphill to get out of the big pile of poo,
not doing very well.
It's not doing very well, and covering itself in it even more.
I'd love to hear your calls on all of this. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. This is Talk, Home of Common Sense.
My home has been broken into, my files have been ransacked, somebody has been put in my office by a hostile state, and two parties are playing politics with it. This is national security of the United Kingdom. And the government's response is not, as mine was, do everything you can to make sure the prosecution works, but no, process. Well, who the hell's side are you on? This isn't about the bureaucracy, this is about leadership. We're not sent here to be civil servants, we're sent here to lead the country and to make decisions.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:30 is the time. Let's go to your calls. Jordan is on the line in Sussex. Jordan, what do you want to say?
Hi there, Julie. Yeah, basically, I think they were spying for China. Basically, I think.
No, I'm going to stop you there. We've got a court case that has been thrown out. These men are innocent until they are proven guilty. There's not going to be a trial. You think that? Can we say? I'm going to have to correct you on that. That China. You believe that China is spying?
I think there's, I'm obviously that hasn't been proven, as you just said there. But I think the fact that they.
Oh, can we not? Okay, I'm going to have to stop. I'm so sorry for legal reasons, Jordan, because it's really important that we don't ever judge anybody before any trial. That you could talk about China. China has been recruiting people to spy. We can say it that way around, rather than talking about the two men who've allegedly been accused of this.
Yes, so I think what you're talking about, I'm definitely agreeing with. In the sense, I think there are. Elements, we say that what I've read about, at least, the states that could be, there could have been, we don't know for certain yet, but that's the indication that I would understand.
And in which case, do you think that the government was wrong to not provide more evidence? The CPS was wrong, it would appear, to not think they needed more, they didn't have enough evidence, and that they should have allowed a child to collapse. Do you think that there's something else has gone on and it's not about the evidence?
I'm not sure on that, to be honest. I mean, I think, what I always think about is, the new BRIC card, for example, that's supposed to be coming out.
The ID card,
soon.
the ID app, yeah.
Yeah, that's obviously, all the data, all our data will be on that again. And, it's been a bone of contention in our house, actually, because I completely am disagreeing with the ID card. I don't see they've got any real...
I'm not carrying one,
real purpose.
Well, that's he won't be able to go to work, won't be able to rent a home.
She thinks they're a fab idea. She thinks they're absolutely great. But at the end of the day, she would also go on a reform protest.
Isn't that interesting? And it's amazing. And again,
she's so angry with reform. She said she'd even go there, and show her dirty knickers to reform. She'd protest. Sorry, I'm confused. She'd protest against reform. No, she's against reform. Yeah, exactly.
Right, okay. But that's the thing, the digital ID cards, again, it's not even a card, it's going to be an app on your phone, and you won't be able to do anything without it. And again, they're such a great idea. Why do they have to make them compulsory? No one had to make it compulsory for me to buy an iPhone because they're just really good. So I use one. Other phones are available. It is extraordinary. And again, we're copying so much. Well, we copied lockdowns from China, didn't we? I mean, that's the thing. I'm not sure we have much to learn from China.
No. So I said, before this, these ID cards that I'm completely against them, as I know you are, and I'm sure many other people are. But so my wife is completely for. She'll just say, this is a this idea. And
won't it be convenient? Yeah, it's just crazy.
Well,
and again,
she kind of is one that she as we say, she likes to kind of toe the line. Someone that's doesn't really like to kind of, even if it's like even evidence against it, she'll still toe the line. So
yeah. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Let's go to Stuart. He's in Portsmouth. Stuart, you want to talk about the idea of a wealth tax?
Yeah, Julia. Hi. How you doing?
Hello, very well, sir.
Yeah, I'm sticking up for my ex-wife here, which is not something I thought I would do.
I don't know. We've roamed into some very weird territory here.
Yeah, we really are. So her salary was her basic was $300,000 a year, which the Labour would class as rich.
Yeah,
that's a nice salary. However, on the Monday morning, she would leave the house at 4 a.m.
Yeah,
and she would come home to me at 10 p.m. on a Friday.
Wow.
Like
she earned her money.
How much more do Labour want these people to work?
Yeah.
Well,
the point is that a lot of people won't do it. If they get taxed more, they'll go, well, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. I'm not seeing enough of this money.
But these are wealth creators, Julia, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, these people, and you can't squeeze them anymore. They're not earning this money for doing nothing.
Yeah.
They work bloody hard every single day.
This is my thing. When we talk about the very rich, whether they're millionaires or not, I mean, people always go, oh, well, if it was that easy, we'd all be a millionaire, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not. I'm a van driver.
Yeah.
And she was a wealth creator. That's the difference.
Have you got a good divorce settlement?
I had to sign a lot of prenups and paperwork.
Bet you did. Stuart, great call. Thank you very much indeed for never Google. That's a fair point, isn't it? Just some more breaking news, because we've had that development from the former Director of Public Prosecutions, Ken MacDonald, saying that he thought that the CPS had enough evidence to prosecute this Chinese spy case. Downing Street have now said it would have been, quote, absurd, unquote, for the Prime Minister to step in after being told the China spy case was going to collapse, although apparently he was told 2 days beforehand. They stressed that the case was a criminal matter for the Crown Prosecution Service to handle independently. Everyone's basically saying, nothing to do with me, Gov, aren't they?
Yeah, and therefore, why has he got ministers to step in? Why is he creating all this problem in Parliament and all the rest of it? It's very strange.
All very strange. The plot is still sickening, I'm afraid. It's not getting they've given out a load of statements. It has not made things more obvious at all. 12:35 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking about British border officers sent to the Balkans to stem the flow of migrants, and why are we paying 60 million quid for a 10-year contract to give private health care to illegal migrants? Try not to burst a blood vessel hearing that. That's up next with Tony Smith, the former head of the UK Border Force. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:38 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me, joined right now by Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force, to talk about the latest stories at home and abroad in relation to migration. Good afternoon to you, Tony.
Afternoon, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. I mean, one of these stories is going to absolutely make people's blood boil. We'll get to that in a moment. First up, let's talk about British border officers being sent to the Balkans to help stem the flow of migrants. This is after Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, had his big summit yesterday, which she did actually say, look, you know, we haven't got secure borders and people have a right to expect secure borders, but she hopes to close down a popular route into Western Europe. How much do you rate this policy and this plan?
Well, I think we need to take this in the round, Julia. I mean, even when I was head of Border Force, we were sending people to the Balkans. That was when we were in the EU, but it was part of an arrangement really to help them build capacity. Actually, they're doing quite well now. The Frontex, the European Border Agency, are doing quite well. If you look at their figures, entry into the EU through the Balkans is down 47% on last year. That's without any intervention from us. Actually, the key routes are the West Africa routes, up 22%, and 40% of crossings in the EU are coming across the Central Med. So it's a bit like
from Libya and elsewhere.
Yeah, so it's a bit like putting your finger in one of the bits of the dike into the EU when there are already plenty of other bricklayers that are already rebuilding that dike and not doing so badly on it. I think we need to look. Well, the other thing Frontex figures show is 54,000 exits to the UK. Which indicates that the UK-France border is probably doing as worse of all of them.
Yeah, maybe we should focus on that, because the reality is, as you say, it's all very well, it's closed down this route, closed down that route. They will always find another way. The Belgians closed down their route. It's probably why there's more people coming from France. Made it harder for people to get here on the lorries and the trains, building more security around the Eurostar. What a surprise, everyone got on boats. They stopped more boats, so they got bigger boats. They're always going to be ahead of us because there's millions of people who want to come here, and there are millions to be made by the smugglers, and we're not going to ever take away those two things, are we?
No, so we need to focus on what we're doing on our border, don't we, Julia, rather than what other people are doing on their borders. I'm all for upstream disruption, transit source country engagement. That's a good thing. I'm glad they're doing that, but it's not a panacea. Yeah. We need to focus on what we're doing at our border. And look, you've got pictures there, which you show regularly, of migrants being picked up in the English Channel, brought into Dover. Now, we know what happens. Yeah. When they get to Manston, we've got 24 hours to process them. All we can really do in that time is take their biometrics, fingerprints, photographs, take whatever we can get off of them if they've got anything, and then they're pushed through this clearinghouse into the country, mostly into asylum hotels, as you know. Very, very few are actually detained, and as I understand it now, the only ones that are being detained are those that are being earmarked for this one in, one out deal with France.
5,000 in, 16 out, or whatever the latest stat is. We are still talking about extraordinarily low levels of that exchange, aren't we?
Yeah, so what you've got to do, which is now the political parties are swinging that way, fair reform have always been there, is detain and deport. That is the measure we need to adopt. We need to detain and deport. Julia, I can tell you we haven't got any detention spaces, so we're not detaining, and we're not deporting many people either, certainly not from this cohort, because they're claiming asylum or human rights, and they are in an interminable legislative process. So two things, right? If we're going to detain and deport, change the legislation much further than the Tories went last time. They got halfway there, but they bottled out, frankly, halfway through when it got to human rights. But now the Tories are saying a lot more things that Rob Jenrick was saying from even then when he resigned as immigration minister. You've got to do something about human rights and human slavery as well as asylum. And that's why he left the Home Office. And now, of course, Farage and the Reform have been saying this all along. I think people are beginning to wake up the fact that we've got to detain and deport now.
They cannot be walking the streets. Well, what do you make of this man, who came over, is it Faraz Khan, we believe from Afghanistan originally, coming over, load of convictions in Sweden. He's been in Europe for ages. He comes over on a boat. He films it all live on TikTok. He films himself making threats to kill Nigel Farage. So only when he publicised this and went to the police that this man was arrested. He's now been sentenced for 5 years behind bars. He'll only serve 18 months. And he's been on remand. And then he's going to be free, as Nigel Farage pointed out, outside Southwark Crown Court. He's going to be free on the streets. He's going to be in an asylum hotel. We're going to be paying for him, or paying for him in a house of multiple occupancy, and he's never going to be sent home.
Now, well, I would have liked to have run into him when I was on the border with some of my mates, and I tell you what, Julie, his feet wouldn't have touched the ground. We would have locked him up and we would have deported him straight away wherever we possibly could. So
well, how could you, though? How could you? Because then you'd have got a lawyer, and a lawyer would have gone, oh, no, you can't do that. He's got rights.
I'm telling you, I don't know if you've read my book, Julia, but back in the day, 70s and 80s, there weren't any claims for asylum from any of this lot. No. They'd turn up and we'd nick them and we'd deport them. No one claims.
Simple as that. Well, now they're very, very lucky. Even if they do end up in an immigration removal centre, they can get access to private healthcare, something that millions of people in this country would love to be able to get access to. The Home Office have signed a deal with Dr. PA Limited to provide what they call urgent healthcare needs of individuals arriving via small boats. They've worked in immigration removal centres and prisons. The deal began last month. It's got an option to run all the way to 2035, which is 10 years. I thought they were going to solve the problem of the illegal boats, and it basically means that they're going to basically give them care at Manston Reception Centre and other disembarkation points in Kent. I mean, why do they need private healthcare, for goodness sake?
Well, so this all goes back to the pull factor and, their human rights, Julia. And increasingly we are challenged that because we're not giving them all these things, we're breaching their human rights.
We don't get these things, and we're British citizens.
Exactly. But no one's representing us and taking us to the ECHR. There is an army of lawyers that are taking this up, and the Immigration Tribunal judgments. You've reported on them regularly. They are very, very left-leaning, and so there is a huge army of legal support for regular migration, asylum seekers, ECHR, all well-intentioned, I suppose, on grounds that we should be humanitarian, look after people. These are dangerous criminals coming into our country unchecked, and I think people are waking up to that now. So we've got to balance this out. What about our own communities? How are they feeling? What about the voters? All your listeners, Julia, I know how they're feeling. You know how they're feeling.
Yep.
It does. If they're going to do whatever it takes, they have to do some of these things that I'm talking about, which is detain and deport. I don't think they will, though, I'm afraid.
No, I still don't trust that, because fundamentally the people in charge and the civil servants and the lawyers all actually think we should have open borders, because they're stark staring mad. Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force, absolutely one of the sanest men on the planet. Put him back in charge, for the love of God. Tony Smith, thank you as always. Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer, listening to all of that, nodding along. I mean, again, a lot of this is about intelligence, but fundamentally it's also about just making us not a place that people want to come. How do you do that? You detain and deport.
You detain and deport. You need a big deterrent to stop them from coming across, and just not let them stay, because it is, we are broke at the moment, and this is costing us billions. And if the government wants to try and get some money back in the budget, stop trying to tax us more. Just get rid of all of these people who are illegal migrants and throw them out.
Yeah, absolutely. Just another development, for the love of God, another development in this China spy case. It's now been stated by a Downing Street official spokesman, that the Deputy National Security Advisor, this Matt Collins, civil servant, who has been, basically, told he's the guy who had to provide the evidence for this China spy trial, that wasn't enough for the CPS to actually bring the prosecution, even though we've had a former Director of Public Prosecution saying it was. Are you keeping up at the back, everybody? Downing Street has now said, apologies, that the Deputy National Security Advisor was told not to speak to anyone who's prepared his evidence. Now, the argument we've been saying is mad. Is it likely that this man prepared the evidence without discussing it with anyone, including his boss, the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, a political appointee in Jonathan Powell, who's got his fingers in every pie, Mauritius or Chagos Islands, you name it? Was it really likely that he never spoke to them? They're saying it was actually the routine handling controls for this sort of case is that he wouldn't have spoken to anyone, even though the CPS came back 2 or 3 times and said, we need more evidence. None of this is adding up.
No. And they're digging themselves deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. The government needs to stop and come out with the truth.
Please, as the Deputy National Security Advisor, don't speak to the National Security Advisor about something that involves a case involving the government.
And don't speak to the Security Service about the evidence that they might produce, and don't speak to the Director of Public Prosecutions and clarify exactly what evidence that they require.
I'm sorry, that rat is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and so is the smell around the whole of this. 12:47 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about a fascinating new poll of BBC viewers, where they have told the BBC they would like programmes to be not more diverse, but less diverse. Perhaps, I don't know, actually reflecting the country where they live might be an idea. We'll talk to Rebecca Ryan from Defund the BBC about that up next. This is Talk.
The case went ahead when the Conservatives were in power because the MI5, all the institutions said categorically they pose a threat. In fact, MI5 said they pose the greatest threat to the freedom of the United Kingdom. The old twisted can't lie straight in bed man himself, he then absolutely refused to do this. Why? Because they're kissing the backside of China at the moment because they want a trade arrangement and they were desperately worried that China would get really hacked off with them for prosecuting them for spying. The Prime Minister is a dead herring, a kipper, and he's well and truly smoked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:51 is the time. Let's turn our attention to the BBC, as we often do, rarely in a way that is giving them praise. But an absolutely fascinating new survey by the BBC asking members of the public about, well, you know, the biggest ever listening exercise. What do they want for the BBC? And one of the fascinating results was actually the majority of people wanted the BBC to be less diverse in its programming. Let's talk about this right now with Rebecca Ryan. She's a campaign director at Defund the BBC. Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
It is absolutely fascinating, this. And I'm sure the people at the BBC would be absolutely horrified by this. But what did people say?
So, yeah, I think the thing that's really interesting about this is this is actually a self-selecting poll from the BBC. So this isn't how you would normally have a poll done, which is randomised across the country and sort of correctly rejigged so that it's representative. This is people who are actually watching the BBC.
People still do that.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's actually quite a huge amount of people that they managed to get to fill out this survey, but these are fans of the BBC, and these people still have yet said, we've had enough of this diversity quota that you're doing. Just stop lecturing us. You know, and that's obviously what we hear from our supporters all the time, and that's why people are switching off from the BBC. But it's really interesting that it's come through in this poll for the.
Well, exactly, and it's not just in the programme. I mean, it is that sort of like, well, there has to be, you know, it doesn't matter if it's a historic drama and everyone would have been white. No, we're going to pretend that one of them was black. There's going to be someone disabled. There's someone else with some other disabilities. It has to be someone who's trans. You're sort of having this constant across every programming, the politicisation, and of course, you know. Of course, we don't want to have sort of, you know, go back to where it was, where everyone on every discussion panel and every show was a white man. Yes, that's probably good that we've moved on from that, but it's got so over the top and deliberate, you can't escape it. And whenever you're seeing something now, you go, why are you doing this? What is the purpose of this? Are you representing our country and the wonderful array of people in it, or are you kind of operating some sort of political regime here where you're trying to sort of tell us what the world should be like?
Well, exactly. And it's just the historical accuracy of it, as you say. And that's what people get really frustrated with, particularly in these sort of historical dramas, which the BBC used to be known for doing so well, is that now we have young people coming up who didn't realise that, you know, there weren't necessarily black people or Asian people in the UK at the time of these dramas were made. Yeah. And so it's just this complete, you know, rewriting of history, which is bizarre.
But also, especially as we've had all these big rows in acting about, so it's absolutely fine, say, to have a black woman play a white woman role, or like this. But if you have a white person playing a person of colour's role, that's outrageous cultural appropriation and disgusting and shouldn't be allowed. Or even someone who's not trans playing someone who believes they're trans. I mean, or a straight actor playing a gay actor, but it's okay for a gay actor to play a straight part. Trying to keep up with the rules this week on this hour of this day is really hard because the rules will be changed by tomorrow.
Exactly. And what happens as a result of this is that the BBC is just so bogged down in all of these woke storylines and everything that it's trying to shoehorn in that entertainment is completely taken out and people are just like turning off because they're so tired of, you know,
being lectured.
Exactly.
I mean, that's it. It's like you want to watch a David Attenborough documentary. Oh, God, now I'm going to get a lecture about climate change and how awful human beings are. And that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, certainly I've not seen a funny comedy show in a long time on the BBC. If you want a good drama, where are we going? We're going to Netflix. We're not going to the BBC. We're not seeing it. But it's really because it's not just the BBC doing this, because we've seen this with advertising as well. And it's absolutely fascinating. look at the industry, found that an analysis of adverts found that more than half of adverts in the UK feature black people, but according to the 2021 census, only 4 out of 100 people in this country is black. But 50 out of 100 are represented in adverts. I mean, loads of people I know have a running joke about the number of mixed-race couples there are. I mean, I don't think it's... I mean, literally, I would say half the couples on telly are mixed-race couples. And we do actually have, and I think this is a good thing, we have one of the highest rates of mixed-race marriage in the world. That's a good thing. But it ain't at the rate the advertiser would like us think it is. And it's just a misrepresentation, because I wouldn't go to China and say, where are all the black people and the white people in the adverts? I wouldn't go to Nigeria and say, where are the white people and the Asian people in this advert? We are still a majority white country. It's okay for everyone in the advert to be white, because actually most families in this country are white.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing that people get frustrated with, as you say. If you see constantly on adverts the mixed race couples, and you don't see, you know, two black people in a couple on adverts either. So you don't, it's just not representative of anything. And so, yeah, people are just getting more and more frustrated with this constant lecturing coming out of the TV screens.
Yeah, and like you and I, look, we've disagreed over years. I've not been a defund the BBC person. I'm like, bring down the funding, and I want them to do their job properly. I have to say, their coverage of what's been going on in Gaza, the trans stuff as well, I'm kind of at the point where that's it. It's now beyond forgivable. But, you know, are they any worse than the other channels? And the only difference is that we're having to pay their sodding wages while they lecture us and lie to us.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And people can vote with their feet with other channels, and if they don't like what, you know, ITV or Channel 4 are doing, they just don't, you know, they have an impact on the ad revenue that those channels are getting, or Netflix or whatever. So the issue is that people are frustrated that they're forced to pay for the BBC, even if they don't watch any BBC, if they're watching any live broadcast TV. And that's the real injustice, isn't it? Yeah. Is that having to pay for this, and therefore the BBC is not accountable. And it's also how the BBC behaves when, you know, something comes up, like scandal after scandal. They're just trying to whitewash everything.
Absolutely. Rebecca Ryan, thank you so much. You're a campaign director at Defund the BBC. Philip Ingram, I mean, it's just, look, I mean, gosh, we've got Ian Collins in the studio now. 3 white people, that wouldn't be allowed on the BBC.
We're ethnically diverse. I'm from Northern Ireland, so I'll play the diversity card. That's in there.
Sorry, I don't even think I should be here. Do you mind if I get it?
Absolutely.
I'm slightly embarrassed by this disproportionality.
But it's ridiculous. I think people are getting fed up with this PC approach to everything.
But it's waggy finger, and it's about, it's like Google does that as well. You know, like, you know, if you do some of the searches and they don't, you know, what they want the world to be and how we should behave. But what's interesting is this doesn't happen in other countries. It only happens in the West. It doesn't happen. They don't, you know, it's like all the, you know, the sort of trans washing.
You go to Lagos. There's no DEI department anywhere.
And we're a very tolerant society. A very tolerant.
I don't even like the word tolerant. I think we're a very welcoming, open society. It's why people want to come here. But don't tell us the lie that half the people in this country are, or that there were black people in Jane Austen, you know, novels. They weren't. Stop it.
I mean, we've advanced. You know, things that used to be the case are no longer the case. Isn't that right, Sweet Cheeks?
I love it when you call me Sweet Cheeks.
Dear HR. Oh, right.
I get a lot better off air, let me tell you. I'm a lucky girl. There's a lot of ladies who'd love to be called Sweet Cheeks by you, Mr.
Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind.
What's gone to show, my love?
Well, we are going to talk net zero because, of course, we are going to die unless we sign up to something that actually half the world hasn't signed up to. And by the way, I was checking out, because, you know, we do diligently do our research on our shows. I know.
I should start doing that.
It sounds like a crazy idea. I mean, in the last 18 years, we've cut our CO2 emissions in this country by